across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk with a Home of Common Sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you are listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for your company. If you miss anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to discuss the fact that small boat migrant arrivals are on course to hit 200,000 in the official Home Office figures that will be out later today. That's since the crisis of, and it is a crisis, of Channel migrant boats began in 2018. Just 8 years. And how many have we deported? Not as many as 200,000, let's put it that way. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer's very busy talking about and holding meetings about what he calls the crisis for all of us of anti-Semitism in this country. He's yet more meetings. Trouble is, Prime Minister, we need you to do something at some point. What do you suggest he does do? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch, ahead of those local elections on Thursday, is calling for a zero-tolerance approach to crimes like shoplifting and vandalism, to basically clean up our local streets. I'm all in favour of that. And Donald Trump has warned that Iran will be blown off the face of the earth to target American ships in the Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, they have already done, or they've managed to get one ship out, certainly a Maersk tanker from the Straits, one of those that has been stuck there since the end of February. Will they be able to get out the 2,000 total ships that have been stuck there since that date? We shall see. Joining me today, delighted to say, is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, as always on a Tuesday. Good morning to you. Good morning. Although I'm going to be confused all week by the whole take the Monday off, bank holiday, and then it's like, what day is it? What day is it? But so much to talk about, as there always is. Question we're putting to our audience today is Channel boat migrant arrivals set to hit 200,000 after 8 years. Reform has pledged to build new detention centres for illegal migrants in areas that vote green. That was a policy they announced yesterday. What's your reaction to that? Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Now, before we get into it all, I just have to say, I mean, when you look at those stats, small boat migrants arrivals topping 200,000 today. That is the very likely figure. Only 7,612 illegal migrants who've arrived on that route have actually been deported in the 8 years that we've seen all those arrivals. There's no doubt at all we are not controlling our borders. We're not controlling the channel. We're not controlling our beaches. On the contrary, we're offering a ferry service to those people who come here. And once they come here, well, they're pretty much free to do whatever they like. Living in hotels at our expense, living in homes at our expense, wandering the streets, often committing crimes, and not just the shoplifting and working illegally, but actually the more serious crimes of sexual assault, rape and murder. We are seeing those stats. They are playing out before our eyes. So what's not to like about Reform's policy to start locking up the people who have no right to be here? Of course, that'll be denounced by the left as an extremist policy. Deportation centres, detention centres, this is outrageous. Except, what else are you supposed to do with people who have no right to be in this country, who've entered illegally or stayed on illegally after their visa has expired? Why should they be roaming the streets freely? Why shouldn't they be sent home? If I went to live in another country illegally or stayed on after my visa had expired, I would expect exactly the same to happen to me. And by the way, this is what everybody thought was normal until about 10 minutes ago, when the left decided that these policies were extreme and far right. But I particularly like the Reform policy, which suggests that they're going to build detention centres for 24,000 people who are facing imminent deportation. They're going to build them in largely green voting areas. So you may have voted green in an area that ends up with a Reform council, but you are not going to get a detention centre. If you vote Reform in a green area and they get a green council, you're still going to get a detention centre. No, lots of people are saying, well, this isn't fair. This isn't fair. This is playing politics. But But I don't understand why the Green Party are saying that this is somehow a threat or a punishment or a terrible thing for the Reform Party to put on green areas. I thought they liked having illegal migrants in the country. Greens policy is actually for open borders. Anyone can come here and no one would face deportation. We've already got hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants, because there are way more than 200,000 in this country, the ones who've come all the other routes or overstayed their visas. They're already roaming the streets. So when someone messaged me last night and said, well, you support this policy, but hey, they'll be living in your area, you live in a Labour voting area, because they're also going to be putting these people in Labour seats and Tory seats as well. And I'm like, I've already got them in my area. They're living in the Holiday Inn at the top of the road on the high street. They're wandering freely. I'd rather have a detention centre where they were locked up but behind barbed wire fences, thank you very much, before they're put on the plane. And by the way, still offering my services to do the putting on the plane bit if you haven't got enough staff to do it. What is not to like about this policy, as far as I'm concerned? Anyone who doesn't like it believes in open borders, and if you believe in open borders, you don't believe in the nation state, and if you don't believe in the nation state, you don't believe in Britain, in which case go and live somewhere else, because you do not get this country. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Tom Slater, where are you?
I think it's a genius move, to be honest. I mean, there's two sides to this, isn't there? There's the question of the practicalities, and is it really in the spirit of governing for the whole country if you did manage to form a government and then treating different constituencies differently? And whether or not it actually would take place if they'd got
this is a small point worth
slightly
making.
Different thing. That being said, it is a incredibly smart way of showing up the latent hypocrisy or shallow thinking of the other side of the argument, because I think in theory Green voters like the idea of being welcoming and throwing open the doors and seeing anyone who raises even a peep of criticism about having loads of unchecked, undocumented men roaming about your constituency, that's all far right and nasty. But I think when push comes to shove, they would change that position or have a certain level of hesitancy if they ended up with this on their doorstep, because there's a lot of places, frankly, who are not really bearing the brunt of this in the same way, who don't have to put up with the consequences of the virtue signalling policies that they support either implicitly or explicitly. So it's a way of just sort of sticking it on them and saying, OK, you said you wanted this, enjoy.
We'll live with it. But again, it's not even what they want, because they want people to be completely
they'd be campaigning to open them, I suppose.
Yeah, well,
but at least to put up with the consequences of their own policy.
But this is what Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, the Republican Florida governor, when people on the liberal left in Massachusetts and Martha's Vineyard, very fancy place where all the celebs go, say, oh no, we're so migrants, this is terrible. Why have you got this anti-migrant policy? Well, sorry, it's not. It's anti-illegal migrant policy. And he said, well, fine, if you want them, you can have them. And he literally just booked a load of buses, put a load of illegal migrants on them and sent them up to Martha's Vineyard, at which point all these people went, oh, no, we don't want them here. No, you just want them in other people's areas. So you don't really... This is the thing. If you think it's so great, have them in your spare room. I don't want them in the country. I don't think anyone should have to put up with people illegally in their country, because I really weirdly believe in the nation state.
And the law.
I'm so... Well, how terribly far-right and bigoted of me.
And if you get up an immigration policy, it should be selective. It should be...
Not young men who can pay the people smugglers.
No, if that is the only barrier to entry, is like, do you have enough money to pay a people smuggler, and do you have the wherewithal to get across the channel? If those are the only two boxes one needs to tick, of course you're going to end up with all kinds of problems. But people are trying to pretend otherwise, and it's just a way of calling out that lazy thinking, hypocrisy, whatever you want to call it. And therefore, it's all to the good.
Blatant lies. These people don't really mean most of the things they say. You've got to live with the consequences of the policies you claim to support. And we will come to that, because I want to talk about the Prime Minister. He's hosting meetings in Number 10 today. Of course he is. He loves hosting a meeting. How you solve everything is you make a statement or you host a meeting. And he said that, and this is the strongest language he's used yet, attacks on British Jews is a crisis for all of us. It's pretty much a big crisis for Jews, mostly, I've got to be honest with you. But yeah, I've been saying for a very long time, as have you in Spiked and on air, Tom, that when they come for the Jews, everyone else is next. Well, they always say, well, the Saturday people first, then the Sunday people. When there is rampant anti-Semitism in any society, that is always the canary in the coal mine, that something is going horribly wrong to the moral heart of your society. When he says he's having meetings in each of, the health secretary's meeting with NHS bosses and the education secretary meeting with teachers' unions and the like, talking about taking action. At the end of the day, comes a point when you don't really mean it, if you haven't actually taken the action. I was quite impressed with the Met chief, Mark Rowley, standing up to Zach Polanski, the Green leader, on various issues in terms of his own police officers last week, but also speaking out about, you know, we need more groups to be showing solidarity. Supposed anti-racists need to start showing solidarity with the victims of anti-Semitism. But what do we actually need in terms of action? Because I wrote a piece for Sun and I said, you know, you can shove your thoughts and prayers and hand-wringing up your backside, frankly, Keir Starmer, unless you take action. It seems to me you do need to ban those pro-Palestinian marches unless they can guarantee there'll be no one shouting globalised intifada, which means kill Jews worldwide, from the river to the sea, which means the eradication of the only democratic nation in the Middle East, and unless, you know, people are not having swastikas, and unless Jewish people who oppose are not feeling intimidated. If your march needs that much policing for people to be safe, it's not a safe march, and no other organisation is allowed to have a march, certainly every fortnight, on that basis. People are saying, like, Unite the Kingdom March, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, organised by Tommy Robinson. Well, in that case, you have to ban both marches. Well, no, because I mean, look, I've not been on that march. I know a lot of people who've gone on it, and people like Trevor Phillips, you know, from Sky News. So, like, he's gone and he goes, everyone seemed really normal to me, very friendly, people of many different colours and creeds and religions. And basically that march isn't calling for the death of anybody. And yes, some Muslims may feel that they are intimidated by it, and I don't like Tommy Robinson's views on those issues. However, people on those marches are not shouting and screaming for Muslims to be killed. Yeah. So there is a difference.
There is absolutely a difference, and there's a hell of a lot of whataboutery, or just changing the subject of conversation when anti-Semitism comes up. I mean, it's fascinating. Whenever we talk about anti-Semitism, the rise in Jew hatred, the fact that it's the primary sort of racist threat that this country faces by a country mile. I mean, Jews are per capita 10 times more likely to be the victims of religiously motivated hate crimes than Muslims. Hate crime is a vexed category, but it gives you a certain indication of how bad the problem is. And yet the response is to say, well, what about Islamophobia? But what about Islamophobia? It's like a tick that people have. Could you imagine if there was if the roles were reversed somewhat, and we had on the same scale an issue of anti-black racism or anti-Muslim bigotry or what have you? They were like, well, what about this group?
Well, we know what happens when people are shouting on about Black Lives Matter, and anyone who said, well, White Lives Matter too, these people were cancelled. Yeah, no, exactly. And it's amazing the double standards that exist here. And it's because of the fact that when people raise, you know, this march rather than that march, even though we all know that whatever you think about Tommy Robinson, it is not leading to or adding to a climate of violent hostility towards any particular group. The fact that there is this constant need to change the subject shows that the left in particular, when they're outriders not engaging in this anti-Semitism or making excuses for it, they're minimising it, they're trying to downplay it. And you think when your whole creedicure, your whole point of politics, if you push them, was that they're against fascism, racism, they're for social justice. Why is it that when you're confronted with actual Nazis,
people dressed in black firebombing Jewish ambulances and people stabbing Jews in the street, that you clam up, you bristle, it almost irritates you to have these cases
And why aren't you talking about, as Zach Polanski did on the Sunday round of media, why aren't you talking about the attack on a Muslim as well? I mean, because that doesn't matter. I mean, mate, you know, sorry, you know, and again, all attacks on anybody, full stop, whether it's religiously motivated or not, are terrible. But if people genuinely feel they can't walk down the street because of their religious identity is known, you have a serious problem, whatever it is. But the reality is, as you say, it is far, far more prevalent as a percentage of the population among Jews than it is among Muslims.
And it's also quite clear, like with the example that you talk about, because the alleged perpetrator in the stabbing in Golders Green also allegedly stabbed a friend of his who also happened to be a Muslim. These things are clearly of a different order. I mean, he went to that area, or that area would have been, shall we say, given the fact that charges are active, attracted to someone looking to go on a killing spree or a stabbing spree because there were Jews there. We all know why this has taken place. It would be like if you had, again, a spate of these attacks and goes, well, knife crime's a big problem. You're just trying to dodge the issue. And I find it staggering that Zach Polanski in particular cannot find even the words to try and square the circle.
But
to
all
say
he says
anti-Semitism
is,
is
but
a
I'm a
problem.
Jew. I mean, his whole thing, I feel the same. And again, apparently he has faced some anti-Semitic abuse as well. And again, this is the thing. It's in the same way as that when you get activists saying that, you know, Kemi Badenoch or Suella Braverman are sort of, you know, what are they calling it, Uncle Tom's or Oreo, or no, whatever the phrase, coconuts and things.
Yeah.
Idea that, like, well, you appear brown on the outside, but you've got white views inside. It's the idea that anybody from any different political background, any different sort of racial background or ethnicity or religion has to have the same views.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
that in itself is racism, and they don't get it. I mean, it is extraordinary. I mean, Polanski has been challenged all weekend over his criticism of the Met Police, those two officers kicking the suspect in the Golders Green stabbing attacks in the head to help basically, you know, get a knife off him and arrest him. I have to say, you know, I mean, it looked pretty shocking, and we are not allowed to play the video. It's shocking enough we're not allowed to play the video on the show. And again, I definitely questioned when we first saw the first video from that Manchester airport scene. Again, there was an ongoing trial there. Questioned, you know, there were no charges brought against police officers, but questioned the kicking in the head and the stumping on the head there. And again, we had a number of police officers on that day saying that doesn't look right to me. That's over the top. But there's a difference between, you know, different cases, and again, there were no charges brought, which tells you that they weren't, you know, that was reasonable policing given what we saw in in other videos. But in this case, you're talking about someone who's, you know, you're following him and you're trying to subdue him because he's stabbed two people, and you tasered him, and you still can't get the knife off him, and you watch it and they think he's got some sort of explosive device on him, in which case, you know, the head is kind of the only place you can safely kick him. I mean, I think pretty much to a man and woman, most sane people are going, good on you. Incredibly brave people. In the Community Security Trust guy who went in, absolutely hero. Those police officers, absolute heroes as well, and they did what they had to do, in my view. But interesting, Polanski has said that when he criticised or retweeting a post saying, this is outrageous, he said, it was the timing was wrong. Well, you know, the circumstances were wrong. It wasn't the right forum. He shouldn't have retweeted it. That wasn't appropriate. What he should have done is raised it, you know, in the London Authority. But should he?
I mean, it just shows he's a coward as well as an idiot. Like, if you're going to repost that stuff, if you're going to be primarily concerned, I mean, he even said in an interview over the weekend that he was traumatised by that video of the alleged suspect getting...
I was traumatised by people being stabbed.
Exactly. I mean, this is absolutely staggering. And also no sense of the fact that the sort of situation that the police were having to deal with, was he wearing a suicide vest, all of these things, this kind of backseat driving, kind of Monday morning quarterbacking which goes on whenever the police are dealing with an incredibly difficult situation, I think is nonsense. But if you're going to retweet that, if you're going to make that criticism even via someone else, at least back yourself. At least, you know,
don't
stick
back
to
down
what it
at
is
the
you're
first.
saying. I mean, and I wasn't apologising for saying it or sharing it. I was apologising because it's the wrong forum. I mean, this is just pathetic. So, but I think this is one of the things about Zach Polanski. Didn't you really used to like the phrase like useful idiocy when you talk about people on the left who are just becoming the sort of Trojan horse for Islamism or anti-Semitism and whatnot. But I think that's more true of him than it is of many others. I just think this is a man who got into politics very late, doesn't really know very much. It would stagger me if he's ever read a book. And this is part and parcel of how he manages to make not only to say various despicable things or make excuses for despicable things or not take the despicable things going on in his own party seriously enough, but also just make an arse of himself all the time.
Sorry about that language. I mean, but it is extraordinary the number of councillor candidates being put up, and I won't name any of them because different areas, but things like councillors who've referred to Jews as cockroaches, as rats, as vermin, calling for all Zionists to be killed. Well, that includes me as well. It's not just, I mean, they use it as code for Jew, but it actually involves the majority of people in this country, by the way, who support the State of Israel's existence. Conspiracy theories after conspiracies, for instance, the stabbing of Jews, that's just it's being put up to make it look like, you know, Jews are under attack so that they can then ban marches and things. I mean, and he ended up, like Zach Polanski himself, liked to post online claiming that Zionists control the government. I mean, this is the equivalent of QAnon in America, and you know, and Hillary Clinton eating babies in a pizza parlour. This is the equivalent of it. but it's even more dangerous. And that's the really scary thing. Very interesting, though, how this is impacting the Labour Party. Interesting piece today about how Labour is facing a Muslim voter crisis. A poll finds that more than half of Muslims will tactically vote to boot Labour out this Thursday, with support collapsing from 80% to just 33%. And Muslim voters ranking Gaza as more important than the economy in local elections. I just want my bins collected and some potholes mended and some litter collected. That's all I want. But no, Gaza. What's going on in Gaza? By the way, that war, there's a ceasefire in that war and has been for quite some time. And again, a lot of the time when people talk about people's legitimate concerns over what's happened in Gaza, no, they're not legitimate concerns. They are concerns based on complete and utter lies that have been put out about what's happened in Gaza: genocide, baby killing, famine, a load of stuff that is verifiably false. Verifiably false. It was a war and people died, including civilians, and the main reason civilians died in the numbers they did, which were very, very few compared to the number of combatants, is because Hamas keep the tunnels for themselves, and they deliberately place civilians, particularly women and children, in plain sight, and basically, even when there's an evacuation warning, force them to stay in an area because they want them to die, because they do not value human life. All of those deaths are on Hamas and not on the Israeli forces, full stop, as far as I'm concerned. But it is extraordinary that the 4.5 million Muslims in this country, many of whom can't vote because they're underage, it's a much younger population, but actually many of whom are, I think half of Muslims in this country, and certainly there's education, are actually non-Brits, not born here. Many of them have residency rights, and as coming from Commonwealth countries like Pakistan, are actually entitled to vote. I've got a big issue with this. If you're not British, I don't want, you want full British citizenship, I don't think you should have a right to vote. And that includes whether you're living here from Poland or from France or Pakistan or South Africa. I don't care. I think you need to be somebody whose life is completely here and has always been. Otherwise, I just don't think you should have a right to vote here. I really don't. But it is fascinating how much this still very small proportion of our population is dictating even local elections in this country.
And it's something which Labour has allowed to happen, not just because many of the policies which have gone untouched over the years about who is allowed to vote and who isn't, but also because Labour has over many decades now played the sort of multicultural pork barrel politics game, trying to appeal to different communities on the basis of ethno-religious grievance, international conflicts. I mean, everyone was shocked and appalled when the Green Party in Gorton and Denton were putting leaflets through letterboxes condemning Israel in Urdu. This is something that the Labour Party have been doing for a very long time. What's happened in recent years is that they've started to be bitten by it. You saw that first in Tower Hamlets with the rise of the Aspire Party. Look for Rahman's mob, who are for all intents and purposes just a Bangladeshi political party. Some of their representatives are even standing for election in Bangladesh. It's
a bit of a giveaway there.
Exactly. And now, since the Israel-Hamas war has begun, we've seen the rise of the Gaza independence. That's something which is going to be a particular feature of this local elections campaign because of the slate of independent candidates standing in places like Birmingham, which are primarily Muslim candidates, primarily standing on the issue of Gaza. Even though if you're talking about bin collections, that's obviously a much bigger issue in our second city than it is almost anywhere else. So this is something which yes, is a consequence of lax immigration and citizenship policies, but also something which has been turned a blind eye to and also kind of fed.
Well, because it was convenient.
Exactly, and it'll work for them electorally.
In basically a load of cities and a load of councils, it's basically been a guaranteed vote. And there's a reason why the Jews have been expendable, because there are only 250 or 270,000 of them, and there are 4.5 million Muslims. It's literally been a numbers game for the Labour Party, and now it's they're disappearing to another party. To a certain extent, I think this is a good thing, because the Labour Party will have to be a bit more sane, and they can't pander to this. But again, if half of the people who of that faith are actually new arrivals in this country, I don't think they should have that much influence on our elections. I don't think I should have that much influence on an election in France. If I just don't think that's how things should work. It's very interesting, though. Keir Starmer has been speaking. Obviously, Keir Starmer's not interesting, but he has been speaking in Number 10, and he has said that attempts by Iran to destabilise UK society will not be tolerated. A lot of talk about some these anti-Semitic attacks may have been basically fermented and organised and often paid thugs, paid by the Iranians, to basically about destabilising UK society. He says it won't be tolerated. I mean, except it is tolerated. I mean, there have been arrests made, obviously, but it is being tolerated. We still have the IRGC, the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. We still have the Muslim Brotherhood able to operate freely in this country. Muslim Brotherhood is banned in most Middle East Arab states, for goodness sake, for a reason. We have hate preachers in mosques. And mosques are not closed down because of it. We have these marches on the streets. It is absolutely being tolerated every single day.
Absolutely. And it's clear that the Iranian influence and meddling and attempting to attack Jewish people or Iranian dissidents on our soil has been going on for a long time, completely unchecked, or certainly not taken sufficiently seriously. The other troubling dimension to that, though, is this recruitment of sort of local thugs, as you describe, because of the fact that they're often drawing on our existing anti-Semitism problem within this country. So it's those two things together which are so
again,
toxic.
Most of that has been imported. If you import people from countries, from North Africa, from the Middle East, and from Pakistan and Bangladesh, where anti-Semitism is not just rife, it is the norm. It is totally socially acceptable and the norm among normal people in those countries. If you import those people to this country and then you put in the hate preachers, you add all this and the grievance culture, what did you think would happen? Because people like me, who've been warning about this stuff for many years now, you just called us far-right bigots. Turns out we were right all along. Imagine our surprise. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. I'd love to hear your thoughts, particularly on the Channel boat arrivals. We are set to hit 200,000 today on the official figure. So the boats that arrived yesterday will have tipped us over to 200,000 over 8 years arriving. But only some 7,612 illegal migrants have actually been deported. What's your reaction to that? In particular, reaction to Reform's pledge to build new detention centres, if they get in, for illegal migrants, 24,000 in total, in areas that vote Green. They'll be their top priority, and then Labour and Tory councils as well. But if you vote for a Reform local council, you vote for a Reform MP, they say you won't have one of these detention centres. Is that just playing politics, or is that actually quite a clear message that actually all these people who say they're welcoming in these migrants and they don't want anything to happen to them, they don't want them deported, will live with the consequences, eh? Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
Islam of fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:32 is the time. Let's get to some of your texts and tweets coming in about Channel boat migrant arrivals set to hit 200,000 after 8 years. That's today. We're expecting those Home Office figures in the next couple of hours. Florence says, bring it on. When it comes to the reform pledge to build new detention centres for illegal migrants in areas that vote Green, bring it on. These migrants would rather be in areas that claim refugees are welcome. So it's a kindness. It's no different to Labour giving their voters extra benefits like diverting funding to their councils. And let's be honest, all governments do that. Jen says this would have been an easy bluff for the Greens to call. Reform will never be allowed to do this. Instead, the Greens called it a threat. Why would they say refugees are welcome, then call this a punishment for Green voters? Exactly. Ben says the left are calling this policy disgusting. Interesting that they think living alongside illegal migrants is disgusting, while also advocating for open borders. And Leo says, I want detention centres built in France with the wasted money we've given them. Yeah, 562 million quid, is it, over 3 years? Failing to do anything about that. Let's go to Patrick, who is in East Yorkshire. He's on the line. Patrick, you want to talk about what the Prime Minister's been saying at this summit this morning in Number 10. We've had some words from him about how attempts by Iran to destabilise UK society would not be tolerated, and talking about the need to tackle what he called the crisis of anti-Semitism. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Empress. I mean, where the hell do we start with this country now? I mean, I'm going through a fourth Labour government, but he's talking about anti-Semitism. Now, there was no political party had more anti-Semitism than his.
Yeah.
He was part of it. Now, the Labour Party used to be the party of the workers, the party of the unions,
yeah,
and it's totally switched now to a totally vote for Muslims, etc., not looking after our own. And it's ridiculous. I mean, when anything happens, he has to have a review, he has to have an inquiry.
Another meeting.
And he's had more summits than Edmund Hillary. You know, it's ridiculous the way it's going on. I mean, forget the KFC I was going to put him in charge of. I'm going to put him in charge of rock climbing because it's ridiculous the way it's carrying on. Now, the way to stop it, I mean, it's all right for them to go and attack the Jews and to burn down the synagogues, etc. But what about the thousands of people who go chanting down the streets? Yep. And thankfully, it's not in my city, but every other Saturday, they're anti-Semitic, and he lets it all go by.
Yeah, and again, people talk about freedom of speech, and it's like, by the way, the same people who shout about freedom of speech, the same people who think that someone should have their entire career and their livelihood cancelled because they supposedly misgender a man who puts a dress on. I mean, yeah, this isn't. You don't have the freedom. You don't have the freedom to shout "kill all black people" down the street. So why should you have the freedom to shout "kill all Jews" down the street?
Well, it's not just that. I mean, poor Lucy Connolly got locked away for 2.5 years for a tweet that she then deleted. But it's all right for somebody to say, go and kill all the Jews and from the river to the sea and etc.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Patrick, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Also, just let you know, counter-terror police are investigating another arson attack at a former synagogue in East London. This is a former synagogue in Tower Hamlets, and there were reports of a fire there at 5:16 this morning. Minor damage caused, but nobody was injured. Thankfully, nobody's been arrested, but the fire is being treated as arson. The counter-terrorism police involved. 10:36 is the time. Let's take a quick break. Then we're going to find out what Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, makes of all the big stories to the news. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:39 is the time. Let's get straight to our next guest, Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, waiting patiently on the line. Very good morning to you, Trevor.
Good morning, Julia.
I must ask you about your former papers, front page today. Very, very strong number there. Small boat migrant arrivals over the Channel are set to hit 200,000 today on official Home Office figures, 8 years after the crisis of those small boats began. They stopped going in the back of lorries so much. They still do that, and now they come on those dinghies. In all that time, over 8 years, 200,000 have arrived. Just 7,612 have been deported. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, look, you're right about the lorries too, by the way. It's probably way beyond 200,000 if you start to include the real figures for illegal immigration. Possibly 250,000, who knows? Nobody keeps count.
Oh, probably way bigger. And if you include the ones who overstay on a tourist or a work visa, you're into the millions.
And no government really is going to be able to do anything now because these numbers are so huge. So huge, they're immovable. We cannot remove them from this country in the sort of numbers.
You think so?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
I mean,
see, I don't. I disagree. I want. We go street to street. It's bye.
I'd be with you, but you're not going to be able to do it. It's simply not possible. When you think about the communities in this country that would rally to their side, I mean, you think about the suburbs of London, in the East End of London, in in Leeds and in Birmingham and across the country. Do you think they're going to stand idly by while 200,000 of their fellow Muslims are rounded up and carted out of the country?
We're going to have to build more prisons then, aren't we, for people who try and defy the law? I mean, I just think it's just utterly bizarre. I mean, I agree with your practical attitude, but I refuse to be that pessimistic.
I'm sorry. I'm just completely pessimistic when it comes to this. These people are a cancer, social cancer in our society. They have metastasized and they are now a danger to our community. Unlike real cancer, we're not finding cures for them. They are a real problem which is insoluble.
And part of it's
and it doesn't matter which party gets into government; it's not going to get better.
I mean, this is the thing. Lots of people might balk at what you've just said, but actually, people living illegally, working illegally, they're already criminals at that point. They're committed a criminal act to get into the country, to stay in the country. The level of criminality on our streets, an awful lot of it, including very serious crimes like rape and sexual assault, are being committed by people who have arrived here from abroad, who've often not got a right to be here, and we seem to do nothing about it. What do you make of the reform policy? They said if we get in, we're going to build detention camps, we're going to deport 600,000 people over 5 years, we're going to have 24,000 detention camps at a time, and we're going to build those camps starting in green areas, but then also Labour and Tory areas. But basically, if you vote in a Reform council, a Reform MP, you're not getting a detention camp in your area. What do you make of that?
Well, look, I may be pessimistic, but I'd really love to be proved wrong, and I'd love to be proved wrong by a Reform government or a Reform Tory coalition or whatever. I think the whole country would love to see me proved wrong about this.
Well, not Zach Balansky.
Well, Zach Balansky is the essence of the problem, isn't he? I mean, this is a really serious problem. I thought that Kemi Badenoch this morning, when she took on a heckler on the issue of Jews being persecuted in this country. And, the Labour Party, you were talking earlier about it being the party of the workers. It was until comparatively recently also the party of Israel, supported by Jews. Jews flocked to the Labour Party throughout the entire last century because it was seen as the humane face of British society, giving a welcoming arm around those who were fleeing persecution. That has totally changed. We're now putting the arm around people who want the end of Western culture, of the Western society, and what remains of Western religion. Yeah,
indeed. And that's indeed the rise of the Green Party has been absolutely fascinating, and how damaging that has been to Labour. And of course, we've seen the rise of the Reform Party and how damaging that has been to the Tories, but also the Labour Party. What do you make of the fact that Keir Starmer is doing another summit, making more statements? Oh, he loves a meeting, does that man, in Downing Street, talking about dealing with the crisis of anti-Semitism after that horrific stabbing, double stabbing in Golders Green last week. But he's basically not been on the campaign trail pretty much at all. He's appeared in a tiny number of constituencies of local council areas, because basically he's so toxic. They know that he'll lose them votes rather than help them with votes. He's set for apparently an election nightmare that's going to be a nightmare in Wales, in the Red Wall areas, in the London area, which is a stronghold. That's where he and all his mates, most of the cabinet, have got their seats, of course, in Islington and elsewhere. And he's basically, the reports say he's under siege from all sides. Greens on the left, Reform on the right. What do you make of their chances and his chances of surviving after this Thursday's local elections?
Well, that's a package of great questions. I mean, Keir Starmer is endlessly useless, and he has proved that since he became Prime Minister. And he is toxic. I think he's the one who's toxic. He is toxic not just to the country, but to his own party. But the strange thing is that he cannot be removed or dealt with or treated because nobody else in the party is any better or any more likely to put the country back on an even keel. They're all going to make things much, much worse because they have policies which will appease those people who are trying to undermine and bring down this government from within. I mean, it's a shocking situation where basically we have a government which is at war with itself internally between one faction or several factions and another. And Keir Starmer is the hapless skipper of the boat, which is rudderless, with its sails down, its masts broken, and it's all at sea. Yeah,
the trouble is we're the ones who are stuck on the boat with them as they take us onto those rocks. In terms of what you think will happen, though, there is this view that, look, they can't agree on who should take over them. There's no one obvious. And there's a Stop Angela Rayner campaign started on the right side of the party. A lot of people wanting to wait until Andy Burnham can get someone to resign their seat so he can stand in what supposedly should be a safe Labour seat somewhere and he can get back into Parliament. You know, Wes Streeting fancies his chances. Apparently Shabana Mahmood, I mean, who knows? Ed Miliband seems to be touted as the Chancellor for virtually all of these people. I mean, that alone brings a disaster onto the country. But, I mean, if you had to put your house on it, that's always my question to people. If you had to put your house on it, who do you think is going to be the next Labour leader and how soon?
The choice is between those who are really bad and those who are the least worst. And of those, I guess Andy Burnham is the nearest thing to someone with some sort of brain between his ears. I mean, Angela Rayner surely cannot be our next Prime Minister. It would destroy the country almost overnight. The bond markets would simply rebel. We would have to have a general election immediately. In fact, I think if Starmer goes, we need a general election, full stop.
Well, they did say, didn't they, after each Tory leader left, that they didn't have a mandate. I mean, that's not actually how our system works, but that's what they argued when it was them, when it was the Tories, so it would be a bit hypocritical if not. OK, so for you'd like it to be Andy Burnham. Do you think that's who it will be?
I didn't say I'd like it.
Well, no, your least worst. Your least worst option.
I think...
Who do you think it will be?
Well, it won't be Wes Streeting, I don't think. It won't be Shabana Mahmood. I don't think it can be Angela Rayner. It certainly should not be Ed Miliband.
So you're left
which, by a process of elimination, leaves us with Andy Burnham.
All right, fascinating, Trevor. Thank you so much. Always good to talk to you. Bit of a pessimist this morning. You obviously didn't have a fun bank holiday weekend. Former political editor of The Sun there. 10:47 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to a former Royal Navy commander about what is going on in the Strait of Hormuz right now. And are we seeing that conflict getting back into escalatory mode rather than basically calming down? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. Delighted to welcome Tom Sharp, OBE, to the show. He's a former Royal Navy commander, joins us in the studio. Good morning to you, Tom. Appreciate your time. What's going on in the Strait of Hormuz? We've got lots of bombastic language, as we often do, from both Donald Trump and from the Iranians. Trump threatening to blow Iran off the face of the earth after shots were fired at ships, after he declared this thing called Project Freedom. He never knowingly undersold any of his projects to end the stranglehold on the Strait. So what's happened?
Yeah, Project Freedom has sort of poked the nest somewhat. There was an uneasy ceasefire before that, with the two blockades interposed on top of each other.
Blockade of the blockade.
Yes, exactly. Got Iran controlling the Strait, which they have done since the 1st of March, since day 2 of this war. And then you got the US blockade that they put in place about 10 days ago, with the aim of inflicting sufficient pain on Iran's exports that it would bring them to the negotiating table. Yeah. Now, that hasn't happened. It probably hasn't had time to happen yet. It was starting to work. And then Project Freedom, I think, was a sort of declaration, a Monday morning market declaration, dare I say it, to try and impose a little bit of order on what's going on. But actually then what's happened is it's poked the nest, and it's created conditions of uncertainty. There were a lot of sort of safety guidance issued from JMIC, which is in Bahrain, the Joint Maritime Information Centre, that actually made things more confusing. And now the uncertainty that's stopping shipping remains. Because
there were about, I mean, not most of them are not tankers, but there are about 2,000 commercial shipping vessels that are stuck in the Strait of Hormuz. I think about 160 or so are oil tankers. And they've been there since February the 28th. We're now in the 3rd month of this war, and people are desperate to get them out. But the main issue is Iran says they've mined the strait. It's a tiny, 24-mile wide, but actually some of it you can't even use because it's just not deep enough, some of these tankers certainly. And they've also got these sort of explosive laden little rowing boats, fishing boats, just put a motor on it and just send it there, and they've got drones as well. Is it possible for the Americans to just send in battleships and just say, bring it on, we're going to escort these ships out? And would those ships, would their owners and the people working on those ships, are they going to be willing to risk that?
I would say it's not possible. The Iranian threat, whether that's the air threat, which we haven't seen much of this time around, obviously
got much of.
Well, we don't know. That's the problem. I mean, and it doesn't take much. It only takes a couple of their better missiles still in a bunker somewhere up a mountain 100 miles inland, and that threat still exists. And this is the exam question. What level do you have to drive that down to assure shipping that it can go past? And that answer is nearly zero.
Yeah. Only 1 in 3 will get bombed, or only 1 in 100, or presumably the insurance companies are like, we need zero.
We're not interested. They're not interested, and yesterday they were not interested. And likewise, the surface threat, which we are now seeing appear, that's been very much the case for 30 years. They've been preparing for this for 30 years. This dispersed, very light, as you say, it can be jet skis, it can be fishing boats, literally anything. Very hard to strike. So that still exists. Does it exist enough to pose a threat to the US Navy? Yes. Can the US Navy write it down to such a low level that ships can freely pass? I think at the moment the answer to that remains no.
And in a normal circumstance, in a war which had the support of the American public, which this war does not, you could be a situation where if there was an attack on an American ship, and certainly if there were American military personnel who died, that would garner more support in America. Like, right, bring it on, go for it. On the contrary, the opposite would probably happen realistically in America, which is like, look, we do not want any more American men and women to die in a far-off war, in a strait most Americans have never heard of and don't care about, and they just don't want this. They want it to go away, don't they? In terms of the pressure on the American president to bring this to an end, and the pressure on the Iranian government, given that they no longer, I think it's crucial, they should not be able to get their own shipping out, because that is providing them with, what is it, $500 million a day in funding. Who's got the most pressure on them right now, and who do you think is going to give in first?
Yeah, I think the president has the most pressure on him. But well, firstly, he's much less patient than the regime.
Well, he's got the attention of a 4-year-old,
right? And they've been doing this for decades, and they can stay there for decades. So this is a shin-kicking contest, and who's got?
And they don't care about being popular,
right? And who's got the higher pain tolerance? And again, the problem with the pain tolerance question is that it's not the regime who are suffering the pain; it's everyone else. So I think they have a sort of a longer term play here, and I think they can wait it out.
Are you surprised, as many of us who are not military experts, who do not know the geographies, and again, whenever we have these crises, we learn about how significant these small little waterways are in terms of 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas and the helium for microchips and goodness knows what. It was like, as we did with the Ukraine war, we're like, oh, it turns out that these is really, really, really crucial for the world economy. Are you surprised that the Americans appear not to have done any pre-planning, or well, I suppose all planning is pre, but any proper planning for Iran to do what they have done before, which is to seize control of the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to make the distinction. It's the White House that seems to have been caught by surprise.
The Pentagon would have warned.
The Pentagon knew, CENTCOM knew. I was part of the team that went to CENTCOM regularly.
Central Command. And,
to help write this plan. And it was a fully cohered, fully costed plan that seemingly didn't make it. A plan
for what?
For exactly what's happening now.
If there were a conflict, this is what Iran's going to do.
Exactly, with including force flow and ships in and aircraft in.
So what could have been done to stop this then? Seizing the strait themselves first?
The trick is to not start it. I mean, that plan is why previous presidents have gone, do you know what? Because they see the spreadsheet and they see the Iranian capability, and then they get a brief on exactly what we're finding now, which is how hard it is to strike back, and they decide to not do it.
And also the unwillingness of democracies to take the hit, the economic hit, as has been suggested by Pete Hegseth and others. Is there not an argument, though, the fact that they're able to do this with the weaponry they've got now, how much more dangerous Iran would be if they did have a nuclear weapon, and why they need to be stopped from having a nuclear weapon?
Yeah, I think you can really build a strong case for that. And the JCPOA, as flawed as it was part of that process. It was at least a deal. It wasn't a very good one.
But a deal that they were flouting.
Of course, they were cheating.
So there's no point having a deal. There's no point negotiating with or having a deal with people who are lying to you every time.
Well, there is, because they're lying against a set of guardrails that you've at least provided. If you just remove the guardrails and go, OK, all bets off, then it gets worse. It's a bit like freedom of navigation. If you just take those guardrails away, then China and Russia will behave worse more quickly.
10 seconds. How's this going to end?
Well, there's a risk that the 3, 4 and 5 American flagships are removed. Trump calls the strait open. He's restored freedom of navigation, and he walks away. That's the nearest possibility.
That would be a good outcome for the rest of the world's economy, but would it be a good outcome for the Middle East and the Iranian people?
It wouldn't be for the rest of the world economy, because there's now a toll on the freedom of navigation forevermore.
Yes, which has been one of the principles it's established. I'm going to get Tom Slater's views on all of this. Fascinating, Tom Sharp, to have you in the studio. Thank you very much indeed. If only there was such clear thinking, perhaps in any of our governments around the world. But there we are. It's coming up to the top of the hour. Lots of calls to take, lots more to talk about. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk with a Home of Common Sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is fantastic to have your company. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you do miss anything from the show, if you just missed actually a fantastic interview with Tom Sharp, former Royal Navy commander. I love the clarity of thought you get from people in the military, because they just don't do basically the BS that the politicians do, and some of us journalists as well. But if you missed that, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about those small boat migrant numbers. They are set to hit 200,000 today under formal Home Office statistics. That's since the crisis began. That's just the boats, by the way. That's since 2018. They're still coming over in the lorries. They're still coming over on work visas and tourist visas and student visas, and then just overstaying. We've got way more than 200,000 illegal migrants in the country. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch calling for a zero-tolerance approach to crimes like shoplifting and vandalism. And also 2 people are dead and several others are injured after a car drove into a crowd. Well, car driven by someone, small point worth making, in the eastern German city of Leipzig. And also, Britain risks falling behind global competitors like the US and China because of, guess who? Ed Miliband's net zero drive. Who's saying that? So Tony Blair, apparently. Well, there you are then. He's got quite a lot to say these days, hasn't he? I mean, has a man ever heard of the concept of retirement? Just throwing that out there. Anyway, lots to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything, in particular on the Channel boat migrant arrivals, set to hit 200,000 after 8 years. Also, Reform pledging yesterday, I rather like this, made me chuckle, to build new detention centres for illegal migrants in areas that vote Green. They won't be in areas, if you've got a Reform MP or Reform councillor, they say we won't build those detention centres there. Is this just playing politics, not being a serious party, as critics have said, or is this totally fair? Because you say you want open borders, you say you want these people, why not have them in your area? And by the way, they're going to be behind bars. They're not going to be roaming free as, they are right now. Give us a call. Love to know your thoughts. What is your reaction? 0344 499 1000. The number to get in touch. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate and text costs 1 standard network rate message. Let's introduce you to editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, who's joining us for the whole show. Morning to you. The other Tom, Tom Sharp, was just in the studio. Didn't get a chance to get your thoughts on this, but it's interesting. What's going on in Strait of Hormuz. This is, in Iran, this is impacting on loads of the stories today. We had the Prime Minister hosting this summit in number 10, because God, that man loves a meeting, saying that attacks on British Jews are a crisis for all of us, but also saying that we will not tolerate attempts by Iran to destabilise UK society. Lots of concerns that some of these anti-Semitic arson attacks in North London, and there's another arson attack that's being investigated by counter-terrorism officers in Bethnal Green in East London, that these may be motivated and paid for and pushed by Iranian agents, and this is a deliberate policy of the Iranian government. And he says they won't be tolerated. A, they are, yep. And B, in the context of what's going on in the Iran conflict, there's no reason why this is going to stop any time soon, is there?
No, not at all. If anything, it's been clear well before the Iran conflict kicked off that the Islamic Republic, I should say, state has been procuring local thugs across Europe to attack Israeli embassies, to attack Jewish sites. There's been a string of arrest plots foiled and so on and so forth. And it's clearly just been put on steroids, that programme, since the war began. Everyone could see this. There were those attacks on Iranian dissidents in West London not too long ago. This is before the Iran war began, and yet it's only now that Keir Starmer is saying we cannot tolerate this. You're not... The Islamic Republic is not going to respond to firm rhetoric from number 10. What it requires is action, and given that the IRGC remains unprescribed, given the fact that there has been no indication really that more powers or efforts or resources are going to be put towards stopping this from taking place, it just, as ever with Keir Starmer, comes down to mere words.
It's sound bites. Yeah, well, he said stronger words, a crisis for all of us. And I've actually seen, you know, some people say, wanting to speak up, we need stronger words.
Yeah.
No, we don't need any more words. We literally need to start arresting people. If you're a foreign citizen in this country and you are tweeting about, you're sending out, putting out blatant, I mean, these people, the people who are obsessed with hate speech, hate speech. You know, let's start arresting some of the people who are on our soil, who are not British citizens, who are living in this country, often on benefits, by the way. Why this is happening, I do not know, but they have been allowed to do so. Who are putting out on social media or preaching in mosque, or because, by the way, this problem is a Muslim problem. If you look at the names of most of the people who are being arrested for anti-Semitic crime and who are being convicted, I'm sorry, they're not called John and Belinda. Right? They're not. It's as simple as that. We've imported this problem as we've imported people from countries where they have an overwhelmingly normal view that Jews are, you know, as some Green Council have been saying, cockroaches, rats, vermin. They deserve to die. They're the cause of all ill on the planet. The destruction of Israel is the main aim of some of these people and some of these countries as well. If you import people from those countries, do not be surprised if you import their views as well. Oh yeah, and also their views about women and about gay people and everybody else as well. What a surprise. You know, none of this is a mystery to anyone who's been paying attention for the last 30 years. But it apparently is a complete surprise to anyone in the Labour Party, anyone on the left, and quite a lot of Tories too. But the reality is, you know, they need to actually start dealing with it. These people shouldn't be in the country. The people who are British, who we're stuck with, who have these views, whether they are Muslim or non-Muslim, you know, white, brown, I don't care. You know, you don't get to go on a march where you walk down the capital city streets where you shout, you know, from the river to the sea about the destruction, calling for the destruction of Israel, and you don't get to shout globalize the intifada, which means kill Jews worldwide. You don't get to do that. You don't get to put swastikas on the Star of David. You don't get to, you know, say kill all Zionists. You don't get to do that because your freedom of speech does not extend that far. No one's does. We need to start arresting those people, and if those march organisers can't stop those people from doing that, those marches need to be banned. I've got no issue with people pretending they really care about Gaza. They don't. They care about hating Israel and Jews. Let's be honest what they actually think. But if they want to pretend convincingly that it's about Gaza and Palestine, then I'm quite happy for them to do their marches. But they don't get to do the anti-Semitic stuff as well. And if the organisers can't stop that from happening, which they apparently can't, then you don't get to have your march. That's the same rule for any other organisation having a march. You need to be able to, convince police that you can maintain order. And if you're allowing mass breaking of the law, you're not maintaining order. And the only reason we don't see riots is because the police don't go in. If the police actually started pulling people out of those crowds who are shouting those slogans, if they should pull the people out with the horrific, Nazi, swastikas and imagery, there would be a riot on the streets. So that should not be allowed. No other organisation would be allowed to do it. But they're not doing that. They need to start taking on the hate preachers in the mosques, closing down the mosques where the hate preachers have. They need to go on. They need to be in the schools, in the universities. Every single time a Jewish student is afraid to go to a lecture because they're being targeted by other students or even academics in university, I want that university fined £1 million every time. Every time, because that'll focus minds. We can deal with this, but it's going to take a bit more of a backbone than, frankly, our Prime Minister has.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have any moral authority on this issue. He's allowed it to creep up. He's been completely over a barrel because of the way in which British Muslim communities have been rebelling against the Labour Party, and he's internalised this idea that, therefore, that makes it impossible to talk about these issues without alienating them. And he has shown time and again that, if anything, when it comes to action rather than words, the actions are things that will boost the supposedly pro-Palestine but ultimately anti-Semitic side of the argument, recognising a Palestinian state, essentially rewarding Hamas for terrorism, clutching his pearls whenever anyone described these marches as hate marches, even though if you pay any attention to what's been going on them, or any attention, by the way, to the groups who were organising them.
With close links to Hamas.
Yes, I mean, like one of them, the Muslim Association of Britain's been involved in many of these demonstrations. It was founded by a former Hamas chief who now lives in London for some reason. This is plain as anyone can see. And the reason that you're seeing this two-tier policing of these protests is what we've realised over the past few years is that essentially, particularly if you've got a cowardly police force or a state which is increasingly kind of politically partial or concerned about the optics of cracking down on a certain form of protest rather than another, then it essentially becomes a form of mob rule. If there are too many of them, then the best we can do is facilitate this as best we can and maybe make some arrests afterwards on the basis of the CCTV. That becomes all...
It's the same as the Aston Villa Maccabi Tel Aviv match. Like, there was a threat of basic mob violence against the Israeli team, so the decision was ban the Israeli team.
Yeah.
That's not a solution to the problem. Round up the people threatening mob violence.
No, obviously. And yet at the same time, when there were those demonstrations, I was up there for the Aston Villa Maccabi game. Even with the fans banned from being there, there was these demonstrations there. There were young men standing in literally the shadows in the trees that surround Villa Park, masking up and all the rest of it. Police standing back,
doing nothing.
And in a sense,
do you think if they had Union Jacks on and they were supporting Tommy Robinson, do you think they'd have been left to their own devices?
Of course not.
And this is the thing.
We all know this.
Yeah.
It's just an insult to our intelligence to suggest otherwise, but we have to carry on with this charade.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, carrying on with the charade while people get stabbed in the streets. The interesting thing is, and we mentioned it a lot earlier, but just actually with so many of the Muslim voters going over to the Greens, I mean, one piece today saying Starmer's facing a Muslim voter crisis. Polls find more than half of Muslims in this country will tactically vote to boot Labour out this Thursday. Support's collapsed for Labour from the Muslim voters from 80% to just 33%. Muslim voters are ranking Gaza over the cost of living and the economy in terms of what they care about in their local elections. I mean, twinning with a town in Gaza, is not a local government policy. That's not going to get your bins emptied or a pothole filled. But if that's what you choose to care about, if you want to live in an area that looks like it's from Gaza, it's in Gaza because no one's bothering to do the actual stuff that matters. They're too busy putting up their Palestinian liberation flags. That's up to you. The trouble is, it's going to impact other people living there. But Labour's basically lost that vote. I'm wondering if that's a good thing, because that means that Labour are going to stop pandering to that vote.
We'll be interested to see how that plays out, because there has been such a profound rupture between Labour and kind of inner city Muslim communities over these issues that you wonder if that it really is repairable. Because previously, we've seen this with all different kind of voter blocks, haven't we, over the years? There was this kind of sense of you have nowhere else to go, that there might occasionally be a kind of charismatic, maybe from Scotland, by-election candidate who you could potentially vote for, but generally speaking, Labour was the only game in town.
Yeah.
That's not true anymore. We've seen that in Tower Hamlets with the Aspire Party. We've seen that with the Gaza Independents who've been cropping up, obviously at the last election, but in these local elections as well, a slate of candidates in places like Birmingham. So it gets to the point where, Labour, and especially with Labour, because there is this narrative, not just amongst British Muslim communities, but amongst the kind of pro-Palestine side of the argument in general, that Labour is this sort of Zionist shill organisation, despite the fact that at best you could describe their response to the Israel-Hamas war as sort of equivocal and all over the place. If I would say much more strongly that they have turned a blind eye to the anti-Semitism on our streets, simultaneously doing things like recognising Palestine and rewarding Hamas. So even if they're relatively sort of, shall we say, mild criticisms and interventions on the issue of this war, and if that's enough to alienate those communities, then they are lost to them. I don't see how that's at all repairable and bridgeable.
And I don't think they should be pandering to them anyway, but there we are. Let's also talk about small boat migrants. Front page of The Sun today, very strong front page, showing the small boat migrants, those channel dinghies arriving, those arrivals are on course to hit 200,000 in total over the 8 years since the first boats were identified. I imagine there would have been a few beforehand, but in 2018 it was identified within years. Sajid Javid, who's then Home Secretary, declared this to be a crisis. But 200,000 have arrived over those 8 years. Another 800 arrived over the weekend. We haven't got the figures yet for Bank Holiday Monday arrivals, but at least 2 vessels were brought in by Border Force authorities on Monday, and we'd already hit the figure of 199,828 by Sunday night. So we only needed to have another 170 odd, and we were going to see that figure moved. Well, we know that there's about 60 or 70 in each of these big super dinghies now. That is very, very, very likely indeed. Now, one more boat alone could actually take them over the mark. It is just extraordinary, these numbers. And in all that 8 years, a sum total of 7,612 illegal migrants have been deported. That one in, one out policy we had much heralded by the Prime Minister last year. I mean, those figures have been, frankly, laughable. 498 people removed to Paris and 482 brought to the UK via the legal route, and that doesn't include the people who've come back. We know at least I think 10 have come back and had to be deported again. We are not in control. Those are just the people who've arrived on the boats. That doesn't include the people we've seen coming in lorries. That is often much unpublicised, but there is still a sizable number, a few thousand who are arriving that way. But also the sheer numbers of those who've arrived here legally and who have overstayed their visas. They arrive on student visas, on work visas, on tourist visas, and they just stay. And no one does anything about it. Those figures have been estimated to be around the 1 million mark. Given that we didn't know any people from the EU were here after Brexit, and when people had to sign up and go, yeah, I've been here and I've been here a few years, and here's my, my pay packet from 5 years ago to show you my pay slip, we discovered there were 2.5 million more EU residents here. They were here legally. They had no reason to hide their evidence that they were here. We have. You know, when you go in and out in the passport control and you think, because it's all electronic now and people are stamping it and things, that there's someone keeps a record. No one does. No one keeps any records whatsoever. When they did keep paper records, they just put them in a warehouse and just literally piled them up in warehouse. I mean, they have no idea who is in the country, who's left the country, who's arrived in the country, who's overstayed their visa. They haven't got a clue. Seriously, they haven't got a clue. So realistically, we're probably looking at 2 million or so. Now, one of the things Reform have announced, Reform say they're going to put migrant detention centres in particular areas, starting with those who voted for Green councils in the local elections this Thursday. This has been announced from Zia Youssef, their Home Affairs spokesman, and from Nigel Farage, the leader. They've got a policy of deporting some 600,000 illegal migrants over 5 years if they win the election, the general election, as and when we get it. They want to build detention centres to hold 24,000 people in total around the country. And they're saying, well, we've got to build them somewhere. This will be very different from those military barracks and places where someone is in those, that's where they sleep at night, that's where they get their 3 square meals, but they are basically able to walk freely in and out of that camp anytime they want, same as they are where they stay in local hotels or in houses of multiple occupation in our towns and cities. No, they're going to be basically behind barbed wire in a detention camp. Now, he said, given that the Green Party is so in favour of open borders, we're going to put them in green areas first. And what has been fascinating and most telling is the response from the Green Party saying that this is a threat, saying that this is somehow a bad thing. But how on earth can it be a threat to send and build a camp in an area where people have voted Green when the Green Party believes in open borders? The Green Party thinks that anyone at all should be able to come to our country, live here, not just for free and never face any threat of deportation, but actually be given a basic income from British taxpayers to live here and be given a free home. That is literally their policy. And now they're saying it would be a terrible thing if people who arrived here illegally were in detention camps behind bars. They're already in our towns and cities and villages, but they're wandering freely. Mine, for instance, are wandering freely from the Holiday Inn on the High Street and all the local bedsits that they've been put in. Wouldn't it be better to have them behind bars if they're not actually legally allowed to be here and were facing deportation? Therefore, they couldn't flee. They also wouldn't be free to commit petty crime, to work illegally, and indeed to commit serious crimes like rape and sexual assault, which we've seen far too much of. But the Greens seem to think that somehow this would be a threat to local people. But if they actually stand by the policies they claim to believe in, surely they would welcome these people with open arms. They would probably lead marches to these camps to unlock the doors and open them freely into their local communities and indeed into their own spare rooms. There's a really easy way of telling when people are complete hypocrites. It's when they act with complete hypocrisy. And that is what the Green Party are doing. I've absolutely loved this policy. It is politicking. It is a gimmick, absolutely. But it's basically calling the bluff of the open border zealots who, well, they talk a good game, but when it actually comes to being on their own doorstep, they don't like it quite so much, do they? Tom Slater, this is playing politics,
oh, yeah.
No doubt at all. But if you're going to build detention centres anywhere, why not build them in green areas?
No, quite. I mean, the only possible objection they could raise is precisely as you say, that the door should be flung open. I think there's a big under-discussed aspect to the immigration question, which is that this is not a 50-50 issue. This is not like 52-48. This is a sort of 75-25 issue, broadly speaking. There was a poll...
75 sane people?
No, exactly. In the direction of wanting to get on top of mass and illegal migration. Even about half of ethnic minorities think that immigration is too high. You wouldn't think that looking at a lot of our discussion. When they polled, this is more in common, polled Green Party voters when Shabana Mahmood announced all of her supposedly very controversial immigration and asylum reforms, half of Green voters supported them. Yep. This is something which, just because Zach Polanski and the people at the top of the Green Party have completely deranged themselves into this sort of John Lennon fantasy that we can have a world with no borders and there'll be no problems. Even you're the sort of person who warms to the virtue signalling of someone like Polanski on a lot of issues, when push comes to shove, do not want this issue on their doorstep. They do not want...
They like it in theory.
Yeah, and and it's the sort of thing where they might choose not to think about it.
But also a lot of people
really
who,
clearly,
as we know, with Green Party voters, you've either got basically a very large Muslim vote in lots of inner city areas for the Green Party now. That's they're relying on that now. But you've also got, you know, the universities, the university towns, you know, the graduates with their arts degrees, who basically they don't live in these areas. It's not an issue. It's not an issue for them, and and again, they're the people who are imbued with this madness of all brown people victims, all white people oppressors. They are imbued with just a complete load of mad, you know, American university utter nonsense, which is based on racism, which is based on judging people by their immutable identities, as opposed to what they say and what they do as individuals, which is always what I find utterly fascinating. If someone calls themselves an anti-racist, they're a racist. It is as simple as that, because all they think about is that. And again, I don't care whether these people are from France illegally or whether they're from Somalia illegally. I don't want anyone illegal in the country. The same way I don't think I should be allowed to be illegally in another country as well. I think this is kind of basic stuff. Yep. What do you make of Kemi Badenoch? She's done some big interviews today. She's very popular on the doorstep, and she's very popular in lots of the polling lately. There's a lot of talk about how, you know, the Labour Party have a Keir Starmer problem. He's barely gone out and done any stuff on the doorsteps of local elections, because basically they go on him as toxic. Like, people are literally going, for the love of God, don't come anywhere near my constituency, don't come anywhere near this local council area because we'll lose votes. They say that Labour's got a Keir Starmer problem, but Kemi Badenoch has got a Tory party problem. People are saying her poll ratings is sky high in terms of the most popular leader, very good name recognition. There's all these stats on name recognition, always hilarious. We'll come to that in a moment. But she, in terms of the party, people say, but I don't trust the Tories. But she's talking about one of the things she wants is things like zero tolerance on crimes that make our lives a misery. So things like shoplifting, vandalism, just general street crime, and how we need to have zero tolerance of that. I mean, surely every party should be standing for that, no?
You would think so. And when push comes to shove, certainly the Labour Party will claim that this is a terrible crisis that needs to be got on top of, but at the same time, as ever, there's a gap between action and words. I think this is a good pitch for the Conservative Party, for anyone, frankly, because people have noticed that sort of just general deterioration of the public realm, the rise of antisocial behaviour, low-level criminality becoming not just kind of decriminalised, it feels like, but it's almost mandatory in some parts of London, certainly. It's just become accepted as part and parcel of living in a modern city. Having your phone stolen, shoplifting rampant, litter everywhere, cycling on the street, on the pavement. Yeah, I'm just normal. I mean, genuinely. I want the stocks brought back. And I'm not even joking anymore. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I think everyone is plagued by a gnawing sense, whether it's not always spoken about in public by politicians, is that it wasn't always like this. Not even that long ago. We did not have the problems that we're currently contending with. And therefore, that's a wide open goal to the parties of the opposition. Kemi Badenoch having a much better couple of weeks than maybe she has done previously. But as you say, the drag anchor on her is the Conservative Party, 14 years. You're going to do the same, failure. How do you get around that? It's absolutely. It is fascinating. I mentioned name recognition. I love these polls. JL Partners have done a poll, and they show a picture of a party leader and ask people just, in the street, recognise. Now, our audience, Spike's audience, very knowledgeable about politics. We eat, sleep and breathe politics all the time. And I suppose when you live in that world, and often, we'll actually know these people personally, of course you'd recognise who they are. But it's always flabbergasted me how few people can know
members of the cabinet. I mean, look, frankly, there are quite a few members of the cabinet I would struggle with because they're such no marks, and certainly some junior ministers. Whereas, there were years back when you would absolutely know them all. But it is extraordinary. Keir Starmer has the highest recognition factor, but it's still only 82%. 18%. 1 in 5 people in this country have no idea when they look at a picture of Keir Starmer who he is. I mean, that may include his wife. Yep. May include, a lot of us they just want to not know. Now, Nigel Farage not far behind him at 78%. But this is astonishing. Kemi Badenoch, only 53%. Only half of the people of this country recognise her. Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, 32%. Again, he's been around for years, but he's kind of rather less distinctive, I would say. Zach Polanski, everyone's talking about Zach Polanski, including us, only 27%. Rupert Lowe, 12%. He didn't even have 12% recognition in the Reform Party a few years ago, a year ago when he was leaving. But I mean, this is the thing. Most people are blissfully unaware of these people. They're unaware there is a local elections and Scottish elections and Welsh elections this Thursday. A lot of people in England certainly don't have any elections at all.
Yeah.
London, lots of different councils do, but an awful lot of areas don't. And even if they do know about it, they're not bothering to vote in them. Turnout will be around, if we're lucky, 40% mark, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, most people are just totally disengaged. They've just had enough of it all.
No, and to a certain extent, it's a regressive, although rational response to what has happened in politics, not just over the past few years, but over many decades now. The sense that political parties weren't delivering, the fact that now there are...
So what's the point?
No, exactly. And I think there was an opportunity after Brexit where there was a lot more engagement to kind of build on that. But again, with the failure of the Tories and then demoralising a lot of voters nominally on the right, and now the catastrophic failures of the Labour Party in a very short period of time, demoralising voters on the left, there is just a general sense that...
What's the point?
What is the point?
What's the point? Exactly.
You can understand
tell me, I'd love to know your thoughts. What is the point? 0344 499 1000 is a number to call. I particularly wanted to hear your thoughts on that reform pledge to build new detention centres for illegal migrants in areas that vote Green, as we see Channel Boat migrants' arrivals set to hit 200,000 today. Give us a call on that, 0344 499 1000. Also love to hear your thoughts on Keir Starmer saying this is a crisis that we need to deal with when it comes to anti-Semitism. But isn't it time for stopping talking? No more meetings and just some action, Prime Minister? Your thoughts on that also welcome. We'll take your calls up next. This is Talk.
Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Let's get straight to your calls. 11:33 is the time. Amanda is in Essex. Amanda, what do you want to say?
I have to say, lovely Julia, that I'm not entirely averse to the idea of a detention centre where I live, because currently we have a migrant camp with 12 to 1,500 migrants, a hotel in the town centre with another 200, and an unspecified quantity of HMOs.
Yep.
And if it were to be repurposed with a bit of razor wire and some nice German shepherds into a detention centre,
you'd be quite happy.
I can't say that I would be unhappy about.
No, I'm with you all the way. But apparently this is horrible and dehumanising, and we keep being told by the Green Party this would be illegal. And it's like, it's not illegal to lock people up who've got no right to be here and then to deport them. It's not illegal.
I agree. It would be so nice to walk into my town centre and not find someone defecating on the pavement.
That would be nice. Is that too much to ask? Have you genuinely seen that?
Yes, and loitering about in large groups to the extent that most of us now have our shopping delivered and our town centre is dying, I'm afraid.
Which town centre is that?
Braintree.
Yeah.
We have about 400 bussed in every day to loiter about and shoplift and intimidate a bit.
I mean, certainly the crime in my local high street in North London, I mean, virtually all, I'm not judging on the colour of skin, or judging when I hear them speak. No. They're foreign. They're not from around these parts.
I don't recognise my sleepy little market town. We don't have much of a market anymore either, because one market stall holder cannot guard all the way round his stall and cannot afford security, so they don't come here anymore.
So it's a free-for-all. I mean, So you'd be quite happy with that. I couldn't agree with you more. It was when it was actually Dan Hodges, the Mail on Sunday, regular on the station, when I was saying I love this policy because that you live in a Labour voting area, they'll be putting a detention centre near you, and I'm like, well, they're in the Holiday Inn at the top of the road. I'd rather they were in a detention centre.
Razor wire around the Holiday Inn, see if I can.
I mean, yes, please, I say. I tell you what, though, you can't get in that Holiday Inn. Oh, I mean, the guards are just there within a second if you try to go in to sort of have a conversation with someone. No. Even standing outside, they literally sent people outside to say, why are you here? I'm going, I'm sorry, I live around here. I can stand anywhere I sodding well want. I mean, just extraordinary. But they let them out. Anyway, Amanda, couldn't agree with you more. Speaking for the nation, thank you for that. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew. What do you want to say?
Yeah, in relation... Good morning. I hope you had a great bank holiday. In relation to Keir Starmer, once again
Why?
today...
Why? We were having a nice show, Andrew. Why? Why do you have to do that?
Because apparently, you might not be aware of this, he apparently is the Prime Minister. He doesn't realise
I was going to say, who's going to tell him?
So, look, this whole thing with the anti-Semitism, he's not leading, he needs to lead. So today he had a meeting about nothing. He should have just come out and said, every single school, when you're back to school, you listen to The World at War, Laurence Olivier, and when they went into Auschwitz. It's on YouTube, here's the link. Every university is to play that in the canteen every day. Every civil servant has to watch that. That we have to start with a platform of the reality of the fact there are 14 million Jews in the world and there are 4 million Muslims in the UK. Who's the problem?
Yeah, I mean that is simply the reality. But again, I think we need education about the Holocaust. We need education about Israel. We really do. We need education also about what happened in the Gaza war, because the lies that are still perpetrated on the BBC, on Sky News, elsewhere are quite outrageous.
Yeah, the one to listen to. I'd love you to interview her. I'll send you the link. It's Melanie Phillips.
Oh, no, I love Melanie. I'm a big fan. We were actually trying to get Melanie Phillips. She's getting a plane around now. We wanted Melanie Phillips on the show today. I'm in close contact with Melanie Phillips. And we've interviewed her about her various books on the subject as well. Andrew, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, it's really, really simple. We're fed up. We're fed up with talk. A bit of leadership, a bit of action is what we need.
Yeah, when you look at the way Mahmood, give her a due, she tried. She said, we're putting £7 million toward this. That's nothing. First and foremost, you had to tax people to get there.
Yeah.
She didn't come out and say anything. And just so you know, I will buy you and Melanie Phillips at lunch or dinner, wherever you like. I'll pick up the wine and the food.
I'll tell you what.
I'd love to have lunch with you or dinner.
I was going to say, you're a brave man, no matter. Anyway, Andrew, that's a very kind offer. Thank you very much, Dean. 11:38 is the time. We're going to go straight to a break. Then we're going to be talking to former Met DCI Mike Neville about, this call for zero tolerance on street crime, but also why the Met Police are trying to extradite the key suspect in Madeleine McCann's abduction and, we fear murder from Germany. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:41 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's talk right now to Mike Neville. He's a former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector about various different crime stories. Very good morning to you, Mike.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, let's talk about crime here in this country. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, is vowing to bring toughness back to Britain, pledging a crackdown on welfare, asylum, but also, crucially, low-level crime. She said voters are crying out for a tough approach in terms of consequences for those ripping off the system. No tolerance to crimes like shoplifting, fare dodging, vandalism, public drug taking, she says, which are making life miserable for so many people. I mean, yes, 100% you say yes to that, but unfortunately this is the sort of thing that every would-be government and every government seems to pledge, but it never seems to happen. Is this possible? Can we actually operate this sort of Rudy Giuliani, New York-style zero-tolerance policy here in the UK?
if they significantly increase the police officers on the street, and if they significantly change the target. So if you said to the police, your entire focus will be on cracking down on crime and get rid of all the background activity like diversity targets and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So the complete focus is on arresting villainy, arresting shoplifters. As I've said on here before, when I was a young PC at Clapham in the late 80s and 90s, you had to get 10 arrests a month, else the sergeant was on your tail. Well, you know, I did an FOI request for the Met, and 70% of them hadn't arrested one person in a year.
Which I find utterly perplexing. What on earth are they doing?
I don't, Julia, I don't know. You know, 95% of them had arrested 5 or less. But and also with this, you've got the political will here, so it's all right coming out, because we've heard all this before, haven't we? But under the Tories, Theresa May, who's probably the worst Home Secretary and probably the worst, well, she's competing with Starmer about being the worst Prime Minister. She brought in that £200 rule for shoplifting, which dumbed down shoplifting.
And basically, it was 100 previously, then it moved up to 200. Basically, don't bother prosecuting under that amount. So everyone started shoplifting up to 199.99.
Of course, and then she really cracked down on stop and search.
Yeah.
And so that reduced it as well. And also the police are not keeping up with technology. You keep hearing about, oh, we're going to use this facial recognition stuff. Do you know what? They're not even using stuff that's been there 30 years. So every shop in London has got a CCTV camera, yet they solve 1% of shopliftings. All our phones have got tracking devices, but they're solving 1% of mobile phone snatches. You know, 40% of households have a CCTV camera or Ring doorbell, and yet 5% of burglaries are solved. So there are some simple things that we could do.
Well, they don't check it. That's the thing. And people say the case closed. They didn't have the evidence. They didn't have the evidence because they didn't ask for the evidence, or they didn't ask the evidence until a month later, and then that CCTV had already gone and things like that. Again, whenever I've been a victim of a crime or a witness to a crime, it has blown my mind, the level of incompetence and the slowness. Blown my mind. And it's sort of, this is non-functioning. As much as I want to blame the police chiefs for their failures of leadership, and I know a lot of coppers who I think are really good people who desperately want to do the right job. They're literally not doing the basic job.
There are so many brave officers, and we saw that at Golders Green recently. But just simple things, Julie. You know, I was in charge. I'd introduce things like this. If a tweet is going to be investigated, then a superintendent has to write their name and say, I agree. So it's not down at the lower levels. The highest ranks have to decide the priorities, because the police should not be investigating this nonsense. It should be swept away.
No, exactly. But also, don't investigate someone claiming they've been misgendered, which isn't an actual thing. Using correct grammar and correct biological, information is not a crime, and never has been. But saying Jews are rats, kill all Zionists, that is a crime. I would like people to be arrested for that. Thank you very much, but they don't.
No, they don't. And as I say, I think we lack the political will. It's all right saying this, but I think the government, people are looking at the mainstream parties, particularly Labour, who've let all these prisoners out, cut down.
The Tories would have done. The Tories would have done it. There weren't any prison spaces.
But then you've also had the 1-year sentence removed, so you can't be sent to jail for 12 months. Most shoplifters, most low-level offenders are not going to get more than 1 year. So if people, my experience of criminals, and I interviewed many criminals because they used to give me information and used to find out about their lifestyle, and the only punishment they fear is going to jail. These community punishments are seen by them as a joke. Half of them don't turn up.
And nothing happens. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've said to you before, tags, look at these tags. The kids know we'll have these tags. So I looked into this. Only 25% of tag breaches have anything done with them. And that could be as simple as don't do it again. You don't get... People think the tag goes off, the old bill come round, right, you broke the curfew,
off
you're going
to prison.
jail.
Doesn't happen. And this is the thing.
They're lying to us.
Well, even when we say, well, someone's going to serve 10 years behind bars, no, they're not. They're going to serve 3 or 4 at best, and even then. But this is the thing. But also, going back to doing zero tolerance. I mean, everyone I talk to in my local road, rubbish bins everywhere, the littering, the cycling, high speed and scootering on pavements, outside a nursery, the fly tipping, the phone snatching, the scooters everywhere. I mean, just the general Does no one care about this street anywhere feeling that people feel? And also, great, why am I paying for everything? Why am I queuing up to pay the till when he's just walked out with 200 quid's worth of stuff and nothing's going to happen? And people feel like they're being taken as mugs. But what happened in New York, and I know there's some evidence for and against, but the general view was, and I'd lived in New York before and stayed in it afterwards, was that when you actually start tackling, you know, the guy urinating in the street, the guy littering, you know, somebody who's dropped their cigarette butt, the broken window, that actually, interestingly, these people have usually got drugs on them, or they've got a weapon on them, they're on their way to or from another crime. You take those people off the streets and everything becomes better. And you do actually stop the serious crimes as well, because there are not all these law-abiding, lovely people wandering around who are being really thoughtful to people who then suddenly commit violent crimes. They're the problem all the time.
Well, Julia, there's probably 20,000 people who commit most of the crime. We should just that's it, the end of the line.
Thank you.
Because, you know, I've always been involved in youth work and stuff, and you think I'll give people 1, 2, 3 chances. Yeah. When you're on your 159th chance,
maybe.
That is happening. Yeah. And if you've got 100 convictions, bearing in mind the police solve, 1% of crimes. If you've got 100 conviction for theft, that means you've done 10,000 thefts. Yeah. This is how prolific.
Let's be honest about it. Can I just get you, before we go, I want to talk to you also about Madeleine McCann. It is 19 years since she disappeared. And the Metropolitan Police, who've been looking into the searching for her, they're now wanting to bring Christian Bruckner to Britain to stand trial for the abduction and murder of Madeleine McCann. One of Scotland Yard's most senior officers are leading that push to charge the German suspect before the 20th anniversary of her disappearance next May. Basically, he's the man who was, the prime suspect, the chief suspect for the Germans. He was serving time for a very long time for rape of an elderly woman, but he was in the area at the time prior to Liz. He's been the prime suspect for many years. They basically, everyone thought they were going to charge him, but they don't have enough evidence, or there's plenty of evidence of him being a paedophile and being a danger to children. There's a whole big thing about how we can't extradite him because because the Germany won't extradite to non-EU countries, so it's another argument against Brexit. But realistically, if we've got the evidence, why don't we just give it to the German authorities so they can prosecute him?
Because I don't think they have the evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I went over to Portugal with Mike Sullivan from The Sun to review the case. Yeah. So I've actually seen the scene, spotted it. I've actually offered my assistance to the parents, and I'll say this again, I'm disappointed that they've never got back to me because my expertise on finding images and the like. Yeah. But there's been a misconstrued. I was a military police in Germany, and I've been out to help the German police since. And one of the phrases that came up is the German police said they had concrete evidence. Now, in this country, that would mean, I've got fingerprints, DNA, and a CCTV and I'm doing it. In Germany, it means there's something tangible, like there's a reason to suspect him. So it's far less. So that misinterpretation of that phrase, concrete evidence, is really here. Now, as you said, extraditing, the German penal code says they don't extradite to non-EU countries. So that is a simple fact. You've got the other complicating factor that the evidence is from another country, Portugal. You've got all that here. And also for extradition, you normally extradite somebody when you literally bring them back and you've got sufficient evidence to charge. It would be very difficult to justify, I would suggest, arresting Bruckner under reasonable grounds. Yes, he's an evil man. He is a paedophile. He's a wicked person. He was in that place at that time. But you know what? We've seen this with cases before. Timothy Evans was in 10 Rillington Place when his wife and child were murdered, and he was hanged in the 50s. But it wasn't him. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So you've got to have real evidence. And I just don't think, no matter how evil Bruckner is, there isn't sufficient evidence to extradite him at this moment.
OK, really interesting to that. Thank you very much indeed, Mike Neville, former Met DCI. Thank you for that. Tom Slater, listening to that, what do you make in terms of that particular case, Madeleine McCann? Because, I mean, millions has been spent in the search for her. I think the realisation is now, I mean, most people view, that she sadly was abducted and killed. And so we're not, hoping to find her in someone's basement, realistically. And although one can understand why the parents would still be holding out hope after cases in Austria and Belgium and America, where young abducted girls have been found many years later. But I mean, it seems pretty cack-handed by the British police as well. We know it was by the Portuguese police, that's for sure.
Quite. I mean, that is the story of the Madeleine McCann tragic saga, isn't it? Is that you have the original horrific disappearance, and then all of this sort of litany of incompetence which attended it afterwards. Is this going to bring any more clarity? Who knows? It's quite clear that Bruckner himself has a string of pretty depraved things on his charge sheet. But as ever with these things, I think one thing that the McCann case showed is just, especially when you've got police forces trying to operate across borders, even more things can fall by the wayside than otherwise.
Absolutely. 11:52 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking to Net Zero Watch's Maurice Cousins as Tony Blair has had a go at Ed Miliband for chasing climate targets over cheaper bills. Is anyone else going to speak up? This is Talk.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is a post-bank holiday thing. My timings are terrible. It's 11:55 and Maurice Cousins is waiting on the line. He's campaign director at Net Zero Watch. Good morning to you, Maurice.
Good morning.
It's going to have to be short but sweet. I do apologise for that. But I mean, it should be short but sweet, like Ed Miliband's career. But sadly, it's going to be the opposite of that. But so Tony Blair is the latest person to call on Ed Miliband and the government to basically stop chasing climate targets over giving people cheaper bills. Nice to hear that there's a bit more common sense coming out of even a former Labour leader, if we're not getting it from the current Labour leader or his cabinet.
Yes, I mean, it is good news that we're having elite defections like Tony Blair.
Defection, I love that.
Coming out and sort of, firing across Miliband's bow. But I mean, if there is a reason why energy is seen as primarily a climate first, issue, I think Tony Blair needs to take some responsibility.
Thank you.
If you go back to his time as when he was the Prime Minister of Britain, he was really at the vanguard of a lot of this rubbish.
Yep.
So from about 1997 right up until the time when he left in 2007, he was pushing both the Americans, so he was lobbying both Bill Clinton and George W. Bush to go further on this when they didn't want to push on it. He was also lobbying the European Union to adopt very ambitious climate targets and renewable energy targets. In 2006, when the Stern Review was published, which set off really all of this, and it was Tony Blair who commissioned that, and that sort of laid the ground, if you like, for the Climate Change Act in 2008. Tony Blair said, and I quote, "There is nothing more serious, more urgent, more demanding of leadership than," and he goes on to say, "climate change. Yep. Should we fail to rise to this challenge, I don't believe we will be able to explain ourselves to future generations that we've let down." So, it feels to me that, what we're going through in the 2020s, it's really about we are living with the consequences of Blair. Yep. Most of the things that he was pushing for.
Absolutely. And the same, we've got the same with the Conservatives who are now going, oh, it turns out it was all in madness. I mean, the thing is, we always knew it was. Some of us were speaking out about it the whole way through. But it is extraordinary. Do you think he's just realised the error of his ways, and a sinner who repents, we should be welcomed, etc.? Or is it just, no, now they've realised it's not convenient, and you get all the little virtue signalling points when you want them, and then when you're not getting virtue signalling points because the public, after climate change madness has hit reality and gone smashing into it and the voters aren't happy anymore, then you realise that actually it's not popular. Do you think he's actually changed his point of view?
I actually think he has. I think reality is starting to collide with him. I mean, look, he is still committed to net zero in principle.
They all are, aren't they?
But I think that there are a number of things that are making it inescapable for them to realise the error of their ways. One being the rise of China, and I think there is a bit of a, oh God, what's happening to us and in Europe now? We really are falling behind, and you've got these two great powers of the United States and China, and Europe, is
both of which, by the way, and again, China's never played along with this madness. America talked a good game whilst they were pumping out as much oil and gas and fracking as they could. But going, yes, you carry on with all this net zero stuff. Meanwhile, Europe has basically impoverished itself.
Yes, that is true. But I think the other area where I think it's causing them to wake up is what's happening with Russia. Yeah. And the reality is we can't rearm and we can't credibly deter Russia if we don't have heavy industry, if we don't have steel, if we don't have ammonia, if we don't have plastics.
Facts. Maurice, this policy doesn't survive the facts. That's it, Maurice Cousins. Great to have you on. Thank you so much from Net Zero Watch. Up next, Conservative peer Lord Craig McKinley. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past midday is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. If you've missed anything from the show, and why would you, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe so you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to discuss the fact that small boat migrant arrivals are on course to hit 200,000 since the crisis began in 2018. That's just the ones we know about, by the way. Labour MPs discussing plans to demand that Keir Starmer sets a date for his resignation in an open letter. This is what they did to try and get rid of Tony Blair and to put Gordon Brown in. And Keir Starmer has been hosting a Downing Street summit today to address anti-Semitism. Another meeting, a few more speeches, a press conference and all of that. But he's warning a rise in attacks against British Jews is a crisis for all of us. Yeah, you'd think it would mean he would actually do something about it, wouldn't he? And of course, we're also going to talk about pub closures. Around 2 pubs closed each day in the first 3 months of the year, according to new industry figures. I'm delighted to say that joining me today is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. And the question we are putting to you, again, as you know, you can call in about whatever you want, as you do. But Channel Boat and migrant arrivals set to hit 200,000 after 8 years today. Those latest Home Office figures we're expecting will show, because it was only a very small number off that mark after Sunday's arrivals. We'll get Monday's arrivals later today. At the same time, Reform yesterday has pledged to build new detention centres for illegal migrants, and they said they're going to prioritise building them in areas that vote Green, whether it's for a local council this Thursday or for an MP in the next general election. If they become the next government, they say they're going to prioritise putting them in Green areas, Labour areas and Tory areas. And if you vote for a Reform council, you vote for Reform MP, you will not have a detention centre in your area. They've been accused of playing politics, but reality is, at least if they're in a detention centre, they wouldn't be able to come out. Right now, they're in the Holiday Inn. They're in the bed sits at the top of the road. So wouldn't I rather have them in a detention centre, even in my area? Well, the answer from me is a big fat yes. Love to know what the answer from you is. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and text costs £1 standard network rate message. Tom Slater, I'm just going to put that question to you before we go to our first guest in this hour. Would you rather? Let's actually would you rather, eat toffee with toenails on it, or have a cup of tea that someone has weeded? Or these ridiculous. Would you rather have a load of illegal migrants in a detention centre in your local area, or a load of illegal migrants, as you probably do right now, walking freely from the local hotels and living and in the local shops, working with their Uber Eats and Deliveroo bikes, working illegally? I mean, it's a really easy choice for me.
You would think so, wouldn't you? I'm old-fashioned, so I think if people break the law, they should be punished for it. I also think if you have no right to be here, you shouldn't be allowed to roam around. This used to be quite straightforward, I think. I mean, I even think that the argument for legal migration, and to what extent and how much and whatever, that people over the years have gone back and forth about, is premised on the idea that there is such a thing as illegal migration, because there are flows that we might not want, because you cannot check sufficiently where people are coming from, what their convictions may or may not be, if the only barrier to entry is the channel and being able to pay a people smuggler. This is kind of obvious up until about 5 minutes ago. That's what's so infuriating, I think, about so many of the crazy things that have happened in society, is everyone agreed this was ridiculous. Everyone but the very, very, very crazy fringe. Yeah, exactly. And yet now it's just the status quo. So, no, of course, if someone's first act in this country is to break the law by entering illegally, why should they be able to But they're desperate. Roam around? They're desperate when they get on those boats from, let me check, very war-torn, dangerous France. I hope it's not war-torn and dangerous when I head there in August. No, exactly. Who knows if that civil war will still be ongoing. You might have to get a dinghy back. I might have to get a dinghy back. It'd be damn sight cheap. Well, probably a shorter queue in the airport than the airport queue. But there we go. But no, but that's the thing. The argument is premised on that it's terribly dangerous and awful, and that's why they have to come here. But that argument simply doesn't wash anymore. Of course it doesn't. I think people have seen that now. Even if you've got someone who is a quote-unquote legitimate asylum seeker, it's not obvious to me at all that therefore that should mean you're able to move around Europe trying to find the best fit for you in terms of where, your family are or whatever. That doesn't seem to me a right that they have. But also it's obvious, and it has been for some time, that this is in large part a funnel for illegal migration. You saw that when, during Rishi Sunak's time, they realised that a third of the small boats arrivals were coming from Albania, which is not a war-torn country, despite the many problems that it has. You see that when you see some of the horrific crimes which have been committed by people who are fleeing charges in other countries rather than war and pestilence. So, the illusion is shattered now, and I think people are willing to go places politically that they wouldn't have done previously in order to get on top of it.
Oh, I'm just, again, deport, round people up, send IC and equivalent, I do not care, deportation centres, bye-bye, turn the boats back, I'm done. I don't think I'm unusual in that. Done now. Everyone's taken the mick out of us. They are literally mocking us. I'd love to know the thoughts of my next guest. Lord Craig McKinley is a Conservative peer who's been speaking up on these sort of issues for a very long time. Good afternoon to you, Craig.
Hi there, Julia.
Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be on.
What do you make of this? First of all, the figures. 200,000 migrant arrivals in the last 8 years. Those are, by the way, the ones we know about. That doesn't include all the back of the lorry, under the train arrivals. It doesn't include the, let's face it, it will be in the low millions, but millions of people who have overstayed their visas, work, study, tourist visas, and are still here working illegally or living somehow on benefits. What do you make of those figures, and what should be done about it?
Well, it's a shame now that we only ever talk about this properly when we hit these ridiculously high milestones. Now, each one of these, in terms of accommodation, their legal aid fees, all of that cost that goes with each of these illegal migrants is about £100,000 each. So 200,000 times £100,000 is a colossal £20 billion.
Ouch.
That is the cost of just looking after these people. Now, we have an unusually high, and this is one of the pull factors, an unusually high acceptance rate compared to anywhere else in European countries. Spain, remarkably low, well, apart from their recent amnesty, but Germany...
Apart from their recent amnesty for 500,000 who, by the way, now all have EU passports, and if we open up a bit more free movement, particularly for under 30s with the EU, which is what Starmer wants to do, can all just come here completely legally.
Well, this is what people who seem keen on the Great Reset ought to be getting into their heads, what it actually really does mean. But just those costs alone, because we seem to be a soft touch, and we get a higher rate of approvals than other countries. Now, once they have settlement and then they have the right to bring their families, you're now into many, many hundreds of billions of pounds worth of cost over the rest of their lives, because, just generally, it's just the way it is. They're not all doctors and engineers, if you haven't noticed. A lot of them will be doing low-paid work for the rest of their lives and will be on universal credit, probably housing benefit, and all the rest of it. We are taken for mugs. And as you've been discussing in that preamble, something has got to be done about it. Now, that something has got to be the ECHR coming out of that, because this is the root of the madness, where even hardened criminals, as was being discussed, that get themselves into the UK seem to amazingly have a claim because their children don't like Albanian chicken nuggets or whatever other ridiculous thing that we, I'm afraid, have become sort of battle drunk over really over the years. There's almost nothing that shocks us. But we've been taken for fools, and you're quite right, Julia. You'll have people who are in on a student visa, and then they claim asylum towards the end of that student visa. I mean, you couldn't make this up as a scheme of madness. But of course, you've got people like the Green Party seem to think we shouldn't have borders at all. Everybody is welcome, and all of that nonsense.
Do you think they understand the actual outcome of that? The number of millions of people who would turn up here if we did have a no deportation policy. Do you think is it just that they like the idea of it? Because this idea that left-wing thing, which is no one's illegal. Well, no one's illegal, but you can legally be somewhere you're not allowed to be. Like you're not illegal, but you're also not allowed to just come and stand in my sitting room if you feel like it. That would make you illegal because you'd be trespassing. I mean, is it just that they want to be nice, or do you think they genuinely understand the concept, which is that if you said that Britain was basically an open house for anybody who wanted to come here, how many millions of people would come here to live here?
Well, you were in a completely different place from the refugee conventions of old in the 1950s, in the, the remnants of the Second World War, and there's lots of arguments about what that actually means. I mean, what I think it means, as I'm sure you probably agree, it's the first country that you come to.
Yep.
It isn't a shopping list to go wherever you fancy, wherever the benefits might be better, where you're given 4-star accommodation. That is not written in the refugee convention of the 1950s. It is seeking sanctuary in the first safe place. Yep. And that is not France. France is safe enough. It's not Britain after you've been through France. And also within that convention is a duty to return to your own country once things subside and it's safe again. I mean, we all hear of mad stories like Afghans going back who've claimed asylum in the UK or going back home for holidays. Yeah. And then coming back again.
No, this is routine, and it's just extraordinary. What do you make of Reform's policy announcement yesterday to build these detention camps? I mean, look, at the end of the day, as soon as you say we're going to deport a load of people, you're going to have detention camps because everyone's just going to disappear otherwise. But the idea is they wouldn't be there for months or years. They'd be there for a couple of weeks while the process, everything's organised. But saying we're going to prioritise building them in green voting areas, and certainly if you vote Reform, council or MP, you will not, or you actually get that, you get majority, you will not have one in your area. What do you make of that policy?
Well, I must admit, I did smile and I quite liked the idea. I thought it was a very clever idea, but the reality is what's going on now, of course. You've got this Labour government saying, oh, well, we're closing a load of hotels. Yeah. But then in the second breath, they're not saying, but they're going to be pitching up in an HMO next to you very soon.
I would rather have them in hotels rather than in a bedsit 3 doors down.
In a way, so would I. But no, I thought the Reform plan was quite fun. It's a bit akin to the plan that I had for green voters. I was suggesting on the net zero stuff, and I know you had Maurice Cousins on just before me, who I know extremely well. I've recommended that anyone anywhere that's a green area should be disconnected from the electrical grid and see how they get on with pure renewables. See how they can.
I'm loving it. Well, certainly when the wind doesn't blow enough and the sun doesn't shine enough, and then everyone else is having to rely on gas or nuclear. I think some of them don't mind a bit of nuclear, but certainly gas. At that point, you don't get to have any electricity because you don't like gas. The rest of us will be sitting there enjoying our having all our heating on. Yep.
We don't actually hear about the environmental issues, about net zero or anything else from the Greens anymore.
No, never mention it.
Have moved on. They seem to have moved on from that to be some pro-Palestinian, heavy overtones of anti-Semitism and all the rest of it, and very, very wacky left-wing politics. They seem to be taking up where Jeremy Corbyn left off.
There's no doubt at all about that. Can I ask you, going back to net zero, conversation we did have about Tony Blair, basically the latest sort of person, Labour bigwig, basically saying, you need to drop this net zero nonsense because they still pretend they believe in it. It's just you've got to prioritise people paying their bills and making sure you get the gas and the oil out of the North Sea. Do you think that Tony Blair, and you were an MP during a lot of this time, do you think that Tony Blair has changed his mind, realised that it was all a big scam and it's all a load of nonsense and it won't achieve anything, and it's not achievable at all and affordable? Or do you think that it's no longer politically a good idea to put forward these cases? Do you think he ever believed in it? Do you think he believes in it now or not? What are your thoughts on that?
Tony Blair might be many things, but he's most certainly not a stupid man. And he has, I think, come to a conclusion that many people are gradually coming to the conclusion of, which is net zero simply doesn't work. It's unachievable, it's unaffordable.
But hold on a minute, but anyone who'd bothered doing the maths could have worked that out.
Well, I mean,
10 years ago, I did.
I worked it out, Julia, about 15 years ago. But yes, I've been doing my best to get people to catch up.
I've got to say, you've been an absolute star on this issue, and I've been speaking out and trying to draw sense into your own party, the Conservatives, all those years. They've finally come round to their senses now, but my God, they did a lot of damage first.
Well, I think what Tony Blair is seeing that uniquely Britain is standing alone in making ourselves poorer and colder. Why are we doing that? The rest of the world is going, well, yahoo to that, especially on the back of problems with the Middle East. Yep. We should be sitting pretty. We might have higher prices and all the rest of it, but if it was at least domestically derived, we'd be raising a lot of jobs, a lot of revenue, nice lot of tax, and we would have a massive amount of energy security.
And funnily enough, gas from the North Sea that comes down a pipeline is cheaper and more reliable than gas that you ship in on a ship from the Strait of Hormuz that's liquefied natural gas. I mean,
well, I mean, the ultimate madness, of course, the ultimate madness is we're getting piped gas from Norway that is being extracted out of the same basin, probably across the median line where it sort of should be ours, but it's coming out the same hole. And we're paying Norway now £40 billion a year for the gas that we could be getting out for ourselves.
Absolutely
now, if that is not completely and utterly bonkers, I don't know what is.
Absolutely.
But the one good truism, and you've just mentioned it, people were saying for years, oh, well, it's international price of gas. Well, that might be true for LNG, which is environmentally horrific because of the transport, the gasification, all the rest of it. But it is not true for piped gas, as you just said.
Absolutely,
the local, regional market, and more especially if it was coming out of our own fields, we'd have a lot more control about pricing and availability.
Exactly.
And that's what we've lost.
Exactly. I mean, it's amazing. All these countries would have all this benefit from doing this oil and gas work, and yet apparently we uniquely, the world wouldn't. Let's talk more specifically about the local elections coming up. Just 2 days' time. I mean, thank God they're almost over. Can't wait to see the results. Many people are saying that the main thing we're going to see is the trouncing of the Labour Party. The Tories are set to lose about 500 seats, about a third of those that are going up for grabs. So the Labour Party predicted to lose a heck of more than half, well over half. Looks like it's going to be a very bad day for Keir Starmer. He's barely even been out on the campaign trail because he's regarded as so toxic. He loses votes everywhere he turns up. How do you rate his chances of surviving these elections?
I've always been on a bit of a different argument on this. I think he will survive. Now, that is a bit contrary to what people like Carl Turner, who you've had on, saying, because you had 243 new Labour MPs in 2019, a horrific, massive amount. I don't think we've ever seen such a turnaround of new MPs in a single parliament. Most of them didn't expect to get elected. Yeah. So they are rather grateful that they can be walking around their constituencies saying they're the MP, probably earning a little bit more money than they would ever have earned in whatever they were doing before. Yeah. Very little of them came from business, as you know. And I don't think many of them want to upset the apple cart too much. They're grateful for being where they are. They see that Keir pulled off some sort of miracle for them. No, the miracle happened because the right wing split between Conservative and Reform, and they got through the middle. There is a seat near me, Sittingbourne and Sheppey, where the Labour guy, perfectly nice guy, speak to him regularly, he won with 29% of the vote.
Yeah, and that seems the norm now.
I'm just thinking of him and many others in these seats they didn't expect to get.
Yeah.
Are probably just very grateful to be there.
Okay, you can say that. They want to be there.
They know no matter who becomes the new leader, if there was to be a new leader, they're still out. There is no.
Do they know that? But given that the polling suggests that Labour have got a Starmer problem, Kemi Badenoch's got the opposite. Kemi Badenoch, it would appear on the polling, has got a Tory party problem. I just want to come to that briefly with you after this. But actually, is it not worse, given that the polling suggests, and there's no evidence to see from Keir Starmer that he's able to pull it all together? We can't have another reset every 3 days. He's just rubbish at being the Prime Minister. He can't do it. He's not up to the scratch. That actually, it's worth a try, whether it's Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband, whether it's Andy Burnham, if you can get back in, Wes Streeting, Siobhan, whoever it is, anyone is better than Keir Starmer.
Oh, I think politically and electorally, that's absolutely right. But I've got a feeling many, especially newer, the 2019
they won't want
Labour
to take the
MPs,
risk.
They've already written themselves off. They already know that they're out of here, and they're grateful for the opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity, a great privilege, and I enjoyed that for nearly 10 years of being a member of Parliament in Westminster, which is a special place to be. I don't think that even in their wildest dreams, they think they can get back in with any other leader. And just you've been through the lineup. I mean, honestly, seriously, in your wildest drunken moments, could you really think Angela Rayner is going to come over the hill and save you if you're a Labour MP? I mean, really, you'd have to have another double shot and get off to sleep rather quickly.
I think that would be the best, but my God, it would be great television. Just finally then, just talking about Kemi Badenoch, she's been around. I think actually I was really impressed with what she had to say in terms of the anti-Semitic attacks in Golders Green last week. She's been taking on the sort of the pro-Gaza crowd. We've actually got a little clip I want to play you of Kemi Badenoch yesterday with a heckler when she was out and about campaigning, she basically gave him what for. Here's what she had to say.
The rise of attacks from the Muslim peace today.
That's it.
Are they not worth protecting?
Thank you. The people who've died and who've been killed were Jewish people in synagogues. Let's stop pretending that something else has happened.
This isn't about...
No, yes, it is. It is. It very much is. It very much is. It very much is about Jewish people. And you can say all that you like, but this is how the 1930s started, with people pretending not to see what was happening in front of them. I am not blind. I can see. No. I'm telling people the truth.
She just wasn't taking no for an answer on that one, was she? Or taking yes for an answer there, Craig McKinley. I think she's been, showing some really good moral leadership on this issue, which I don't think we have seen from the Prime Minister. But she's got some interesting policies out. She's far more popular than the Tory party. You were someone who was trying to get the Conservative Party to be sensible on issues like immigration, like net zero, like lockdown, which has put us in the financial hole we're in right now. You've been on the right side of all those arguments. What do you think that Kemi Badenoch needs to do? You're a Tory peer right now. What does she need to do to bring up support for the Tory party so that they're not facing, the same threat they're facing from reform as Labour are facing from the Greens right now?
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, I'm a right winger, as you've just. Well, am I? I don't know.
I think you're middle of the road. I think people have started calling it right wing.
No, well, exactly right. I don't think I am. I'm just right thinking. I just, just come to these conclusions myself. And I'm very, very pleased to see that the Conservative Party, the leader of the Conservative Party, who got a lot of credit from that video yesterday. I mean, it was so good. I retweeted it myself on my own feed. She got a lot of credit for that. She's getting credit for lots of good Conservative policies that, frankly, I've been frustrated about, that I haven't heard enough of for a very long time. And she's now saying those right things that people, well, not just want to hear, but they've been desperate for, because I think fundamentally, forget the mad whoever that was shouting at her yesterday, of which there are a few kicking around. I mean, it's all very odd. If you were to substitute Jewish for some different race, people would be up in arms that it's being discussed in that way. But seemingly in Britain today, very sadly, appallingly, anti-Semitism seems to be allowed, and you can go on a march and you can call for the global intifada or whatever you fancy, and the police will look away and do very little, and actually tell anyone who's obviously Jewish, remember the case last year, you better leave this area because otherwise you might be causing a public problem. I mean, we should not be in this state. We need to stand up not just for the Jewish community, but everybody's got rights in exactly the same way in Britain, and that's what I stand for. I'm a libertarian conservative first and foremost. But going back to Kemi and where the Conservative Party is, I think we're finding our feet again. We will be hearing more, I'm sure, about tax policy. I've been asked to feed into some of that centrally, so I'm sure you would agree with it, Julia, and I'm sure many of your listeners will.
We shall wait and see.
Net zero, we're in a completely different place.
Well, we shall see how that works out. Craig McKinley, Lord McKinley, Conservative. Thank you. We covered a lot of ground there. Thank you for that. Tom Slater, just in terms of sort of moral leadership on a lot of these issues, I do think that, the Tory leader has actually been the one who's been leading on that, hasn't she, in terms of the anti-Semitism?
No, absolutely. There's the formal role that she continues to play, excuse me, as leader of the opposition, which therefore, when it comes to properly facing down Keir Starmer on these issues, she's stepped more into the fray. Also, whatever you think about those allegations about 50 years ago, Nigel Farage, what you may or may not have said at school, that makes it more difficult, shall we say, for him to talk about this issue.
Absolutely.
Whether or not they're actually true, and he strenuously denies them. But also, I think, as you saw in that clip, I think Kemi Badenoch has a certain moral and intellectual clarity on this. She did a lot of work when she was in the Women and Equalities brief on the kind of rise of identity politics and the way that has revived anti-Semitism in its own terms. Yeah. So I think she has thought a lot about this and can therefore speak from that position of moral and
it's not just reactive. Yeah, indeed, very interesting. We're going to take your calls up next. 1226 0344 499 1000 is the number to call on events at home and abroad. As always, you get to choose what you want to call about. We'll take those up next. This is Talk.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Got a variety of topics that people are calling in on. Also, just one last message about those Channel boat migrant arrivals and Reform pledging to build new detention centres for illegal migrants in areas that vote Green, first and foremost. Hayley says areas that vote Green will get what they voted for. Areas that vote Reform will also get what they voted for. It's as simple as that. Well, exactly, except, of course, if you voted Green, what you actually want is not people in detention centres who've arrived here illegally. You want them being given a free house and allowed to stay and never facing deportation. It's almost like the exact opposite, isn't it? Weird, that. Anyway, let's go to another call. Charles is in Darlington. Charles, you wanted to talk about where we are with Iran. What do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. I haven't spoken to you for a long time.
Where have you been?
I don't know. Here
Busy,
and there.
life, job.
I'm 80 years old, almost.
Right.
And I can remember Iran as it was. I nearly went to work there once. But the what can we call it? The Islamic regime in Iran. If it isn't got rid of, I'm 80. I'm not going to be around many more years. So I'm not going to see it. I fear I've got a wonderful 5 grandchildren, and I fear for them. Because if the mullahs are not totally got rid of, and Iran goes back to what it was pre-79, then they will rebuild. They will get their nuclear weapons one way or another, because there are too many idiots in the world who will let them, like Obama did and all the rest of it. So I'm worried, because if you've got a world with a Islamic regime with nuclear weapons, the world is doomed. We're doomed, Mr. Manor.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, I really wish that this Trump regime, administration, the White House had actually done a bit more pre-planning. We had a military guest on earlier about the concerns that the Strait of Hormuz would be targeted by Iran, and that would be an economic problem, and that would put pressure on the West to give in. But at the end of the day, if there's a nuclear weapon basically launched on Tel Aviv, and the whole Middle East is dealing with that nuclear fallout, I'm sorry, you're in different territory altogether.
So many people, like your naval officer you had on earlier, they can't see beyond next time they go and fill their car up.
Yeah, and we have to, and this thing, if you're up against regimes who are looking in terms of generations, even hundreds of years, you need to be able to cope with this. But I just wish we could have done better prep for it, us in the West by not having mad net zero policies, America by, warning countries a bit more and doing what they could to secure the Strait of Hormuz first. But we're going to, at some point we're going to have to take Iran on.
Well, I spent 20 odd years in the army.
Yep.
During the Cold War. And the thing about the Cold War, we had nuclear weapons.
Yep.
The Russians had nuclear weapons. The thing that's kept war away was MAD, mutually assured destruction.
Yep.
We didn't want to die. The Russians didn't want to die.
Yeah.
Problems with the mad Islamic regime, which is nothing but a death cult, they don't care. They'll blow up the world.
Yeah.
They know, as far as they're concerned, if they die, they'll go off and get their 72 virgins and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So they don't give a damn.
Absolutely, and it's so important we keep remembering that. And quite apart from all the disruption they caused with Hezbollah and with Hamas and the Houthi rebels firing on the Suez Canal, and the terror attacks across not just Middle East but across Britain, Europe, in America. I don't know why countries are putting up with it. And people say, well, you can't take them on. Well, you definitely can't take them on once they've got that nuclear weapon. Couldn't agree with you more on all of that, Charles. Thank you very much. The wisdom of a few more years on the planet there. Charles, thank you. Let's go to Simon in London. Simon, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, hi, Julia. Good morning. Thanks for having me on. First, I'd like to say I agree with every word that Charles has just said. Yeah. He's absolutely right. But I want to speak very briefly about anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. You're quite right. when you said, I mean, you're right, completely right in all that you say on these things. And, anti-Semitism has been imported back into the UK, and very willing audience with this hard left lunatic fringe.
Yeah.
But what's really annoying and upsetting is that the massive spike in anti-Semitism has been really down to so much vilification and hatred of Israel, and so much propaganda and lie been spread, and they've been eaten up by people who, unfortunately, they want to believe the lies anyway.
Yeah. Oh, Simon, your line keeps going in and out. Sorry, we got to the anyway. We missed you after that.
Sorry, I don't know where I was.
No, sorry, apologies. No, but I agree with you. Again, people are, as you collect your thoughts, again, if the BBC, Sky News and everyone else, they pump out these lies about genocide in Gaza, famine, killing babies, and then they say, well, people are understandably concerned and they're anti-Zionist and that's reasonable. It's just different from anti-Semitic. We all know that actually it's the same thing.
It's all the same. But I also want to take it one step further, because apart from BBC and Sky and mainstream media, it's also pumped out every day in Parliament.
Yeah.
And you've got people like Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana, various other independents, etc., etc. And pretty much every day, one or more of them are standing up in Parliament, talking and pushing genocide.
Yeah.
And I really feel that in His Majesty's Parliament, MPs shouldn't be allowed to do that, because they're pushing a narrative, an unfounded narrative, and they're misrepresenting the facts on the ground.
But again, people. I mean, I know so many people who are not remotely political, and I know they haven't got a racist bone in their body, and they will say, "Yeah, but like Frank, why would you want to go to Israel, given what Israel's done in Gaza?" And I go, "What do you think Israel's done in Gaza?" They've seen the UN reports and the BBC reports and the the hand wringing, and why would they not believe it?
That's the problem. And whilst this is allowed to be pushed out by members of Parliament and people in authority,
and our state-run television,
correct,
state-funded
we will have
television.
an anti-Semitism problem in this country, because young people, like you've just quite rightly said, and people say, well, what about the genocide? What about this? And it's not being called out.
Yeah. Well, also, if you live in a world where everyone could just change the definition of words, like what a woman is, no wonder you can change what genocide is. I mean, and just pretend it is. Really interesting points there, Simon. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that. 12:36 is the time. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, listening to that. And this is an issue, isn't it, in terms of what is going on? Prime Minister, again, hosting this summit today. I've got to be honest with you. I was writing my column in The Sun on Thursday after the show, and it was about the anti-Semitism. And then I thought, oh God, the Prime Minister's doing a speech. I'll have to watch that. And I'm genuinely struggling. I'm going to start going through so many televisions at this rate. I'm just wanting to throw things. I can only listen a few minutes at a time because he makes me so angry. He talks the talk, and everyone goes, "Oh, he's got a Jewish wife, and his children are half Jewish," but he's just talking. He doesn't take any action.
No, and people have had enough of it. I think the anger amongst British Jewish communities, I know we were both up in Golders Green on the evening of the attacks itself, is palpable, and this is not what you tend to get from British Jews as well. They don't tend to protest, don't tend to make a lot of noise.
The fact that the Prime Minister couldn't get out of his car outside those gates was a very big giveaway, wasn't it? Well, we're going to talk about this a bit more. We're also going to be talking about 2 pubs closing every single day because of just the ridiculous pressure they are under financially. We're going to talk about all of that before we get to the top of the hour. Do stay tuned. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:40 is the time. Let's talk a little bit more about, well, the Prime Minister hosting another meeting, making more statements, talking the talk yet again, tackling anti-Semitism. Let's talk about that with Dr. Charlotte Littlewood. She's a researcher for the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism. She's also a policy and former counter-extremism coordinator for the UK government for 3 years from 2015. Very good afternoon to you, Charlotte.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. We've done your job title. We haven't got time for an interview now. Really great to have you here. Now, we've got another meeting today, another summit. The Prime Minister's making statements. He's been doing that all weekend. He's called in, lots of, leaders, academics, teaching unions, NHS bosses, and they're meeting with their various different cabinet ministers to be told to take some action. Are you expecting any action to actually happen? Because talking about we need to tackle anti-Semitism isn't really going to keep working, isn't it? Tougher words aren't going to make a difference. What do you think should happen, and what do you think will happen?
So they have actually talked about reviewing the terrorism legislation so that the IRGC can be banned. So that's really important. So if that happens, that will be hugely important and effective. They're talking about recording anti-Semitism at universities systematically and feeding that back up so that we know the scale of the anti-Semitism problem on specific campuses.
Don't we know that already?
No, that's not enforced. So there are Jewish societies recording anti-Semitism on campus, but the university themselves is not required to keep a record and then to share that record perhaps annually, which is something I think that should be happening at schools as well. But that's really important. Where it kind of fell weak, I think, was calling for Holocaust education at schools, because that's already mandatory. What needs to happen is that we talk about contemporary anti-Semitism as well as Holocaust education, so that the students know that this issue didn't end after World War II. Actually, this is an ongoing issue facing Jewish population in Britain today.
And they might recognise that. The thing is, it's all very well like recording things. So educating people, yes. Recording events, yes, because you need to know the scale of the problem. But the question is then, what do you do about it after that? Because, I can see, and everyone I know who's been to the marches, I can't trust myself at one of these marches because I know I'll end up being arrested. These pro-Palestinian marches, which are actually have become hate marches. We know there's a problem. You can hear the chants, "Globalise the Intifada" from the river to the sea. You can see the placards. You can see the the Nazi emblems on the Star of David, etc. I mean, you can see it. I don't need to have a report on it. I just want it to stop. And the police don't take any action. Sometimes later on, people are often getting a slap on the wrist. There is not a clear statement about you don't get to do this because it's a crime and we will not allow you to do this. So knowing about it, I mean, we know the scale. There are Jews being killed and being stabbed. There are synagogues being arson attacked. We know it's happening. Do we need another report? Do we need any information, or shouldn't we just start doing something about it?
Yeah, we absolutely need practical action. And I think what's been really alarming is the inconsistent approach of police forces across the country with respect to criminalising slogans like "River to the Sea" and it being done properly in some areas and not in others. So something really has to be done to hold police groups accountable for where they haven't met this standard and not done what is expected of them in these situations. And we've seen pretty weak sentencing as well of those that have been involved in anti-Semitic crime, some just getting away with a caution. So there absolutely needs to be more deterrence. But this is a grassroots issue. This is in digital media, it is in some political commentary and narratives, it is in particularly Islamist rhetoric, which is pulling the strings of the far left. And we're not seeing what needs to really happen now is the far left dropping its relationship with Islamism.
Well, indeed. I mean, we're seeing on the contrary. I mean, the Corbynistas, they're embracing it full on. They're only losing out at all to the Green Party, which again has decided to embrace it full on.
Well, the Green Party is a real concern to me that on the back of some of Polanski's comments and what he's been doing on social media, we've actually seen a rise in popularity in the Green Party, up to 21% in the March assessment by YouGov. So that's above the 16% for Labour and Conservative.
A rise of what?
Support for the party.
Yeah.
So they're up. Just what's that? Here's my maths. Less than 10%, but above.
But they're up, and you think they're up because they are pushing an anti-Semitic agenda?
Yeah, and quite a
which they, by the way, blatantly are.
Yeah, I think that combined with a very strong sort of far left populist agenda. So that is really concerning, that's actually capturing the interest of British citizens.
And again, I mean, and how much are you concerned about, because this is a big issue to me, that again, you talked about, the need to have education about contemporary anti-Semitism. And we do have this difficulty of someone being anti-Zionist or someone being anti-Semitic, and it's perfectly legitimate for anyone to criticise Israel, the government, the IDF, Netanyahu, absolutely fine. I do it myself, got no issue at all with that. But the issue in terms of the coverage of the 7th of October massacre and indeed of the resulting, I would say, defensive war by Israel against Hamas in Gaza. The coverage of that, I regard most of that coverage as anti-Semitic, because holding Israel, the only democratic state in the Middle East, to a higher standard than we hold even our own government and our own allies' governments and military in terms of their policies, even when actually they are exhibiting on all metrics higher standards anyway. If you're holding one group to one country to a particularly high standard, you don't hold any others, and you express no concern about people dying or starving in other neighbouring countries, but you're uniquely concerned about one area where it happens to involve Israel. It seems to me that is blatant anti-Semitism.
I think where that was the most clear was post-October 7th, on the day and the few days afterwards, where claims of genocide and support for Hamas were being made and denial of the atrocity were being made. And if you look at the rhetoric then and you really dive deep into what was going on in social media, what various politicians were saying at that point, you can really identify where the anti-Semitism is and what it is. Yeah. It does get grayer as we move into the conflict, and it is quite clear that Israel is using excessive force, and there are some credible human rights issues there.
As there are in all wars.
Yeah, but you can find it in the accounts that were claiming that on day dot, and those that have made that their consistent campaign and have negated to mention anything about Iran and the abuse of Muslims in Iran.
The mass slaughter of between 10 and 40,000 people.
There is a way of extrapolating who is genuinely criticising Israel for genuine grounds and who is being anti-Semitic. It is a bit difficult to be able to extrapolate that, but we have to get our head around that and do that. That's a part of the work that needs to be done.
Absolutely. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy is one of those who was in this summit with the Prime Minister today, and she has suggested that some pro-Palestine marches could be banned by the government. She says they make Jewish people feel not safe to go about their daily lives. She's pointed to new powers to manage the protest marches. She said that many find incredibly intimidating. There's a difficulty, isn't there? People have a right to protest, right to freedom of speech, we argue, but these are marches which are intimidating, not because of the people on them, but because they are shouting slogans which mean kill Jews. I mean, which seems to me to be something that isn't part of our freedom of speech. Would you endorse banning those marches if they cannot stop that side of things up their marches?
I think we've walked into this situation. I think the government has created the crisis that it is now in with respect to the marches. If they had been handled right from the beginning with arrests where crimes are committed, with a proper understanding and identification of these slogans early on and met consistently across the country, we wouldn't be seeing the terrible situation that we're in now. Now, the answer to a terrible situation, I don't think, is to ban the marches. I think it is to increase the vigilance of the police, understanding of the police, training of the police, ensuring that the police actually are held accountable where they're not doing their job properly, and to increase sentencing and to do all we can, increase the enforcement around these marches to the fullest without banning.
You can go on the march, but if you do commit a crime, you will be pulled out of the crowd. Yeah, except the police aren't going to do that. That's the worry. Charlotte Littlewood, so good to talk to you. Really appreciate your time and your expertise. Dr. Charlotte Littlewood is a researcher at the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism. Thank you for that. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking to the landlord who started that brilliant No Labour MPs in Pubs campaign, given how much they were basically undermining the British pub. He's the landlord of the Old Thatch. Andy Lennox is going to be talking to us about the fact that we are seeing, on average, 2 pubs closing every day in the first 3 months of the year. That is how hard pubs are being hit. What can we do about it? This is Talk.
It just so happens that it's all "you're amazing."
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:53 is the time, and welcome back to Andy Lennox, landlord of the Old Thatch pub in Wimbledon and spokesman for the No Labour MPs in Pubs campaign, joining us to talk about, well, a rather sad story, very sad story, certainly for publicans and indeed their regulars. 2 pubs closing on average every single day in the first 3 months of this year. Andy, you've been battling not just for your own pub but for many others for a long time now. Why are they closing at such a high rate?
The tax burdens is way too much, and this is the biggest problem that we've got. You've got 2 pubs going, but it's actually 4 hospitality venues every single day, and the tax burden and the 2 budgets successively have put the industry into freefall. It's a real problem at the moment, and we're trying to figure out what the next step is. You've got so much tax going through the system. There's just not enough money going around.
No, exactly. Well, let me talk about, by the way, they reckon this is 161 pubs the first 3 months of the year, according to the British Beer and Pub Association, have closed across England, Scotland and Wales, equivalent to 2,400 jobs. But I bet you anything, if those 2,400 jobs were in one factory, in one constituency, the government would be paying attention and trying to do something about it, bailing them out. But not so for pubs. They say they're helping. But tell us, it's really important for a lot of us, we're like going to a pub, but we don't know how the money works. We're going, how much for a pint? I think, was it London hit the £10 a pint mark over the weekend? And people are going, but I'm spending a load of money. The prices are going up. How are they not able to keep their doors open? So talk us through all the different financial pressures you're under.
So to be totally clear, there is no dynamic support from the government at all. And the only way that support is going to work for our industry is a VAT cut in line with Europe.
OK. So what's the VAT rate you're facing at the moment?
We pay 20%. The average in Europe is 13%.
That's a big difference.
That is the big piece. Everywhere else in Europe values their hospitality, and they value their pubs, and they value their restaurants, and they see it as a career. And with the advent of AI, it's going to become one of the biggest industries out there, and they see that. And they value it, and they have cut the tax burden appropriately.
And it's good, and it's good for local communities. It brings people together. Social. I mean, everyone's worried about their kids going, "Oh, my kid, my teenagers on the, the computers all day on their phones." No, get them in the pub, actually socialising and talking to people and making friends and finding other halves and things like that. I mean, these are good. These are vital places in the community. So what else you've got? Because you've got business rates as well as being a big issue, and of course, still dealing with the fallout from lockdowns.
Yes, you've got the business rates, you've got your employers' NICs that have come on, so your employers' national insurance contributions that have come on. You've got increases in your business rates, you've got increases in pretty much every single part of the
minimum wage.
System.
A lot of these jobs
minimum
are
wage,
the low-paid
living
jobs.
wage. All of these things that basically have gone up. So the reason that you've got your pint and your pint's gone up by £1 is not because we're making more money, it's because we're paying the staff more money to be there.
Yeah.
And the biggest way to solve that, and the quickest way to solve that, and stop this actual churn becoming an epidemic of pub closures and hospitality closures, is to cut VAT to European levels.
Yeah.
If we can get to a 13% VAT, so 7% VAT cuts down to 13%, that solves an enormous amount of problems. And when we're making, when we want to make 10p in a pound, but we're now making 3p in a pound, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people are saying, well, I was drinking at home during lockdown. I was getting my bottles or my cans of lager or my bottle of wine, and it's a fraction of the cost. Not realising, of course, you've got rent of the premises, you've got the heating, you've got the electricity for the cooler, all the pay, buy the glasses, someone to clean them, someone to serve them, and all those taxes as well. There are a lot of extra costs, but it is different. Having a drink on your own at home is different from going to the pub and having the fun of socialising with people,
and that community piece. I mean, drinking at home is probably worse than going out to the pub and having a pint with a couple of friends. And they are social spaces, they are community spaces, and they are important spaces that basically need to be looked after. And you've got this problem at the moment where we are trying to employ young people. There's a big problem with youth unemployment. We are that employer, but we can't afford to employ them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
and what we're saying is the way to solve all of this is cut a VAT rate in line with Europe, and we'll go away and we'll make it work.
And we'll keep those jobs, indeed. And that, again, it'll probably pay for itself. I've got a 19-year-old who's doing her very best to keep the pubs open. Single-handedly, she's doing her best for you. Anya Lennox, I love talking to you. Thank you so much. Landlord at the Old Satch. He's the founder and spokesman for the No Labour MPs in Pubs campaign. I loved that campaign, Tom said, because it was just literally, no, if you're not going to support us, you don't get to come and drink here.
No, absolutely. And I think it's incumbent on the government to step up and provide precisely the support that we're hearing about there, and on the rest of us to our patriotic duty.
Patriotic duty. Go and have a pint. Go and have a glass. I know, but especially people working from home, they don't go to the pub at the end of the day. They don't all that.